Good morning, fellow commissioners and public. I'd like to welcome you to the Sweetwater County Board of County Commissioners meeting this Tuesday, September 1st, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 8:30. I'd like to remind the public that they'll be able to comment immediately following the public hearing presentation, if there is one, and also during the public comment section of the agenda by calling 307-872-3891. or by sending comments ahead of time via email to publiccomments@sweet.wi.us. With that, I would like to notice that the quorum is present. All 5 commissioners are here. And with that, I would ask that you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands under one nation, undivided, indivisible, like God, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Little back feed on that. I apologize for that. With that, our first agenda item is to approve the agenda. Commissioners, we had a send out last night of my request to from planning and zoning regarding the industrial siding for the Gateway South. Mr. Bingham as well as Mr. De Leon have a MOU for Gateway South and a letter of interest to be party to the industrial siding. So I'd ask that we amend the agenda and add a tab Q for that Gateway South project and letter of interest. Any other agenda items, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Smith, good morning.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lloyd. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approve, same sign. Or oppose, same sign. With that, we'll move on to our next agenda item is approval of the minutes, and the minutes from August 18th of 2020. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Shanefield.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented by Commissioner Shanefield. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion? With no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next order of business under tab B is acceptance of the bills, which is approval of the county vouchers and warrants and approval of the bonds. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Smith.
I'm
sorry, Commissioner.
I was kind of stymied.
Hey, there we go.
I move to accept. That's the trick of Zoom, you know.
Lloyd.
Jeff and I sound so much alike, but I'd like to move to approve the county vouchers and warrants and approval of all bonds as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. We have a motion by Commissioner Lloyd. Is there a second?
I would second, and it's easy to get us 2 handsome dudes confused. It's twins.
That's what happens when you think alike, right? Anyhow, we've got a second by Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion, commissioners? No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. With that, we will open up the floor for now for county resident concerns. And Tim, we will wait for your lead unless you have something.
Okay, I do have several comments.
Okay, while we're waiting for others to come in, would you please read them and possibly tell us who they're from and who that person may be with?
Okay. All right, we'll start. This is Clarice Still. It says, to whom it may concern, it is time we moved past all of the fear mongering and destruction of our economy and our rights in the name of COVID-19. The state of South Dakota is where we should look and follow their lead, not New York. The masks are useless at best in preventing the spread and quite possibly detrimental to our health and well-being. No one has ever studied the long-term effects of wearing them in adults in a community setting, much less on children. Thank you, Clarice Still. Okay, so most of these are in regards to the resolution. So the next one is Gina Young. It says, to whom it may concern, RE honoring the Constitution of the state of Wyoming by allowing Sweetwater County residents to make their own health decisions amid the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. I support this resolution and believe it's in the best interest of Sweetwater County to allow every grown adult to make their own decisions regarding their health and the health of their family whom they have legal custody and care of. The coronavirus has a 99.96% recovery rate. It is treatable with therapeutics, and in Wyoming, we have had amazing results in the past 5+ months. We flattened the curve, allowed hospitals time to get their protocols and supplies in place. We, as the citizens of Sweetwater County, are able to stay home and take care of ourselves when we are ill. The elderly or immunocompromised can seek medical treatment and do well when treated early. And when they are treated with the appropriate meds, we have competent doctors and nurses in Sweetwater County available to treat any and all who need help for whatever reason. Never in history have we quarantined the healthy. We do not need contact tracing. It is ridiculous to quarantine the healthy. If the government, our commissioners or city councils in Sweetwater County were so concerned about our health, we'd have a lot more gyms available to us with mandates. We'd be more strict with restaurants we allowed to set up in our community. Processed foods in the grocery stores wouldn't be allowed, and alcohol and tobacco would be outlawed. These COVID restrictions and mandates are not about our health. The masks do not protect anyone from microscopic virus. They are doing more damage with acne, MRSA infections on the face and skin, bacterial pneumonia, and upper respiratory infections are on the rise as we speak. Sinus infections are happening more and more. People are getting chronic bloody noses and becoming dizzy due to the lack of oxygen and dehydration. What is the number one way to induce cancer? Deprive the cells of oxygen. What is even more scary is with fall and cold and flu seasons approaching, this will be a nightmare. Think about those dirty, moist pieces of scrap fabric and runny noses and all the bacteria from the mouth and nose breathing against the chapped skin. So dangerous. Putting a scrap piece of fabric on one's face does not protect anyone from corona. It is so much smaller than any fabric or scrap available. There is no magic fabric, felt, paper, metal, plastic, etc., that's going to stop corona from being in the air or being passed. Masks are running humanity, the kindness we've been known for here in Wyoming. They block interpersonal communications, are a nightmare for so many who read lips and are hard of hearing. Our body's vibrational frequency radiates at 6 feet. Isn't that interesting that they want us to keep our feelings or touch, our love, our connection to ourselves, depriving individuals of that needed connection? Masks are taking away individual identity. They are causing unrest and anger. This is not about our health. I'm sick to see masks on little ones' brains are developing. What a nightmare. Rock Springs, Wyoming has children wearing masks while running in PE, indoors and out. Green River, Wyoming has children wearing masks outside before they enter the buildings and then taking off their mask in closed spaces. How does that make sense? To deprive them of fresh air while outdoors. New families, children, and youth are having a really hard time meeting new friends and feeling welcome in our community. Loneliness, depression, and abuse is on the rise. It makes no sense and is abuse to all in so many ways. Help to end the madness. We ask that you represent the people of Sweetwater County. With the low numbers, daily decreasing numbers, and the amazing results we've had with so many recovering, or those who've had no signs being asymptomatic in Sweetwater County and all of Wyoming and are doing well, coronavirus is nothing we can't handle. When one doesn't feel well, they need to stay home and get better. We need to move forward doing what we do best. Washing our hands, not eating off of other people's food, staying home and sick, seeking medical help when necessary, eating good food, exercising, breathing fresh air, taking good vitamins, etc. Being that so many who have had tested positive had no symptoms, makes no sense to keep them at home. You don't quarantine the healthy, only the sick. This virus is not novel. There is plenty known about it. The CDC is updating their numbers and recommendations weekly. It is not what it's said to be. This needs to stop. Just like with sport games, matches, etc., there's always an ambulance on standby for emergencies. We all participate in life knowing there are risks. The ambulance is there to take us to get help when needed. We don't stop living our life because we may break a bone or get a car wreck. We have hospitals, good doctors, therapeutics, and treatments to help. We need to get back to living. Thank you, Senator Tom James, and all those involved in bringing this forward to the county commissioner. Once again, I support this resolution and believe it's the best interest of Sweetwater County to allow every grown adult to make their own decisions regarding their health and the health of their legal custody and care of. Okay, so that was, thank you for your time and consider us, Gina Young. All right. Okay, one more. Sweetwater County Commissioners, this is from Nina Tyler in regard to COVID-19 resolution comment. I urge you to not pass the resolution essentially allowing Sweetwater County to opt out of COVID-related, including mask wearing and social distancing. According to the article in Sweetwater Now, Mr. Tom James states that such measures have arguably resulted in social ills, including increased unemployment, business closures, suicides, poverty, domestic abuse, homelessness, and alcohol and drug abuse. I would expect that commissioners would be prepared to read and entertain reliable evidence to this effect specifically related to Sweetwater County. Have such statistics been compiled and shared? While I appreciate Mr. James's point that each competent adult shall have the right to take his or her own health care decisions, I would argue that by ignoring measures designed to keep the general public safe impedes on my right to remain alive and healthy. My right to life trumps the right to liberty. In other words, by adopting this resolution, you are in effect giving away my right to make my own healthcare decisions. I wholeheartedly urge you to let this resolution die. All right, next is Brandon Finley. My name is Brandon, and my question could be related to all restrictions, but I will focus more on the indoor restrictions. High school fall sports are starting, and the first game of the season in Green River, the announcers were threatening to shut the game down by halftime because kids were running around. This all outside, mind you. How do you feel about getting rid of outdoor restrictions, and are they really needed? These are places and events that are safe, and kids are going to run around and socialize as they do all day at school and weekends. All right. Next is Sierra Burch. I am so glad you are all meeting today to discuss personal health rights in association with COVID-19. My personal concern is that when a vaccine is available, it will be made mandatory for people to work or go to school. I sincerely hope that does not happen. And I ask you as a committee to make sure mandatory vaccination is illegal. It would infringe greatly on personal choice and freedoms. Thank you for your time. All right, next is Aaron Christensen. I totally agree that face mask and social distancing due to COVID-19 is completely unnecessary. There is zero evidence that face masks help at all, and to the contrary, the face mask can in fact cause more harm than good. Just this weekend, the CDC concluded that only 6% of the US COVID deaths were only from COVID itself. The other 94% had 2 to 3 other risk factors. The election infection is just that, fake propaganda. The destruction to the economy and to the added fear to our republic has done far more damage than any virus ever could. This is Wyoming, where we usually proudly uphold the Constitution that makes this country the best in the world. Don't let corrupt politicians trick us into giving up our freedoms to become a communist, Marxist state. One other thing, I happily let my children return to school. The 6 months of home isolation had a very serious negative impact on their psyche. That being said, I'm very disappointed how Sweetwater County School District number 1 has handled this return. I do understand that masks while moving between classes makes some sense, at least to those who actually believe this pandemic. But to make children wear a mask for 7 straight hours, then turn off the AC in the school buildings when they are already struggling to breathe normally is beyond lunacy. And not allowing kids to use the bathroom except during hourly class bathroom trips. Well, honestly, that's just plain ignorant and illegal. On top of that, The school district wants parents attending an outdoor football game with socially distanced guidelines to wear a mask. How does any of this make sense? Wake up, America. From a very concerned longtime citizen and parent. Okay, then we have one from Laci Ferrell. Commissioners, when hearing arguments related to healthcare autonomy in Sweetwater County, please also consider how this impacts the autonomy of not only the competent adults making healthcare decisions, but every person they may come in contact with. Because coronavirus is highly contagious, these decisions have the potential to impact each and every person. That said, individual encounters and growth exponentially from there. There are people who will refuse to follow healthcare recommendations no matter the science that backs them. This puts essential workers and those who must go in public for groceries and necessary supplies at higher risk of illness. It puts their children at risk who must attend school or daycare, with those whose parents continue to believe that deaths occurring all over the world somehow are a hoax or government conspiracy. By allowing people to ignore public health guidelines, you are taking away the autonomy of others who are attempting to carry on with their lives in a safe manner. I understand that the percentage of people who die from COVID-19 remains low, and that the number is lower still in Wyoming and Sweetwater County. It is my hope that we keep it that way. If that needs to be done through mandatory mandates, I feel that it is a necessary step. Thank you, Laci Ferrell. Okay, so that's all that came in through email. I believe we have a phone call.
Yes.
Did it get transferred in?
I don't have the instructions. I don't have the ones.
Is it there? Okay, we have one that we need to transfer in through the phone.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay. Transfer.
Hey, I was here to bring in the data, as an expert. So if I can respond to all those comments at the end, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Bjork, you'll be allowed to provide public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Oh, this is Ted.
Hey Ted, this is Tim with the county. I'm going to try to transfer you into the conference now. Okay, just a second.
Okay.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. You entered 93317160006. This meeting ID does not exist.
Okay,
Hello,
we do
this is Ted.
have Barney there on the line. So
They're on the line and not audio or not video.
correct. So they're on the phone. So Mr. Barney, go ahead.
Mr. Barnum, yeah, this is Commission Chairman Wendling. Please state your name and who you're with, please.
My name is Ted Barney, and I'm a citizen of Green River, Wyoming.
Oh, Ted.
And I want to say thank you to the commissioners for letting me have a word this morning.
Thank you.
I would like to address the COVID-19 resolution, and in reading that it's about the Constitution of the State of Wyoming, Article 1, Declaration of Rights, Section 38A, that each competent adult shall have the right to take his or her own health care decisions. First, I would like to point out that it is his or her own health care decisions. If the entirety of Wyoming laws and statutes just reflected the needs of the individual, then we wouldn't have such common things as speed limits. Speed limits, me deciding to drive over the posted speed limit could be a healthcare decision of my own, but that won't fly in a court of law. If we're looking to remove mandatory mask requirements, mandatory contact tracing, and mandatory social distancing, we might as well do away with vehicle insurance, speed limits, and following too closely. It just doesn't make any sense to put the public at risk for one individual's desire to break a mandate that is given by those of us that like a statute or a resolution. And I just don't see that this applies at all, because it does nothing to protect the community in general. So if we want to do away with COVID mandates to protect the health of the community, we might as well do away with speed limits and a wide variety of other laws. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barney. Tim, anybody else out there? Tim, I would ask that as the public comment concludes for individuals, please move them back into the waiting room as for our meetings. The waiting room is there for individuals that are on the agenda. You may hold them in the meeting room till near the time they come up, please. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So I do have a couple more emails that have just come in this morning.
Would you read them, please?
Yeah, this is from William and Sarah Hymas. Public comment on healthcare autonomy. I am very concerned about this. I work for Man's Face Terrace, which is a senior independent living. Being willing to care for the most vulnerable in our community shows who we are as a society, and encouraging people to not wear masks and social distances is not caring for the most vulnerable. The fact that you as commissioners are considering entering into this and politicizing something that should be informed by medical professionals and science is scary. If I catch COVID because I also have a compromised immune system, should I send the bills to you? Or if I can't work, or if it is fatal, will you pay for my child to attend college and care for her? If you're concerned about the economic health of Sweetwater County, maybe get some businesses in downtown Green River before you worry about whether or not I need to wear a mask in said business. And then we have, this is from Tanker 42. Doesn't have a name, but it says, thank you for the opportunity to comment. I wholeheartedly support the resolution. As adults, we should not be oppressed in making our own healthcare decisions. As an essential worker, I've been working almost every day since this COVID-19 pandemic started, and I actually resent people who are scared to go out, but want me to be scared too and conform to their demands. If I were sick, I would want to stay home until I wouldn't infect anyone else. If I were one of the asymptomatic people, I surely would have exposed many by now, but I hardly know anyone who has had it and never been traced back nor been quarantined. Thank you for your time. And once again, I do support the resolution.
Thank you, Kim. Anything else?
That's all I have for now.
All right, we do have Mr. Bjork on, did I pronounce that right, Harold? Bjork?
Bjork is correct. Thank you, sir. I appreciate
All right.
that consideration.
Do you have a public comment, please?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Bjork, who, we understand who you are, but who are you with? And you said you were an expert.
Yes, I am. Let me introduce myself. My name is Harold Bjork. I live here in Rock Springs, Sweetwater. I'm a retired engineer, scientist, used to work at Los Alamos National Labs. Currently, I'm on a federal incident management organizational team right now at a federal type 1 level, which is the top levels. And I am working with that team. I do that even though I am retired. Okay, I'm a data analysis. I have a background in nuclear engineering, scientist, and I've also taught at universities statistics and mathematics. Okay. I've been asked by several of our state legislators to put together this information based on our team recommendations. And I'm not here to recommend or change or to sway anybody's opinion here. I'm just putting out the facts. I do have my own personal opinions, and they're based off of facts. So I'll just leave it at that. And I do appreciate you guys getting together to discuss this matter. I just want to let you know where we stand, okay? This thing has grown. It has peaked. It has come back down, okay? And if you look at the graphs, and I can provide you a PDF or some type of graph if you guys like to me to forward this to you, I can do that at your convenience, and you can get that information. Tom James, our senator from one of the districts here in this area, he also has access to these graphs, and he'll provide them to you as well. Let me move forward to say where we are. So, and I do appreciate everybody's concerns on this matter and what we need to do to address these issues. Our current fatality ratio, which is our deaths per cases, this is not death per capita, okay, is at about it was at 7.7%. It is currently at 0.6%. You know what that means? That means we're at 8.6% of where we were at the max. You know, we fixed this. Cases per capita, okay, that's per the population in this county. Our county population last estimate was at 42,343. Okay, at this time, our cases per capita, our average is 0.03%. That's not 1%. It's not a tenth of a percent. It's 0.03%. That's a very tiny number. Where we were at our maxes, cases per capita, we're at 10%. That's a considerable decrease. I mean, that is almost a phenomenal one. That means we've done our job in identifying the cases, and we've done our job to identify, you know, we minimized our deaths. We've only had 2 deaths in this county. I've talked to those people, the families of those deaths. One was a 77-year-old man that had a do not resuscitate and do not intubate order. He was an ill man. He was dying from other causes. He tested positive for antibody tests, which is not a current viral infection. It means he had something in the past, and it might have had an effect. It might have not. We don't know. But the man died because he wanted to not be intubated. The other person was a 90-year-old lady. Same kind of situation there. She had antibodies, not actual viral infection at the current time of death. Okay? So we cannot really truly attribute her death to that, except for maybe natural causes, more than likely. Okay? Now, I know those family members. I have talked to those family members. They are distraught because their family members were actually labeled COVID deaths. Well, I would be distraught too, but those are comorbidities, and it wasn't the cause of death. The cause of death was natural causes. Okay? So when you really look at the deaths per capita, you know, per capita, per our 42,000 plus people in this county, is at 0.000021% over the 221-day average of yesterday's average, actually. The maximum we ever got to was at 0.002362%. That's hardly a drop in the bucket. Now, I do understand people's concerns that they are more at risk if you have heart issues, lung issues, cancer, or any other type of immune thing. We all understand that. We all need to take individual precautions that best suit it for ourselves, and of course our loved ones as well, those that we have that we have stewardship over. Okay, now as a nation, I can give you the same statistics, and for the state as well. Our county is way better than our state. Our state is at 10% of what the nation is on any of these statistics. That means our state did its job. That means our counties are doing this job. It means our hospitals, like Memorial, just up on the hill, has done their jobs. Now, I got to say, I got to give a lot of kudos for Sweetwater Memorial, because they actually put out the number of tests they do, the type of tests they do, the number of people that have recovered, you know, and those numbers are remarkable numbers when they've tested over 6,000 people in our county. That's 1 out of every 7 people that have been tested. That's phenomenal. And of those people, about 80 to 90% of them are asymptomatic, and have not been put in hospital. We've had very few hospitalizations. Not at one point, any hospital in the state of Wyoming has been at capacity for this. They have not been overwhelmed, and they've had the resources as they need it. Okay, so if you guys like this information, I can provide that to you. Whatever way you decide things. And the other thing too is the governor has not mandated mask wearing. So it is not a law. It's not a mandate. It's only a recommendation. For everything else that has been put out by Alexis Harris as a businesses shall do this or shall do those are health orders. Now, I do agree with the law when it says we have the right for our individual health care, but also there's laws in the Wyoming statutes that actually allows the health officials to do their jobs and issue these orders, and they do have criminal penalties for not following those orders. Those laws can only be overturned or stopped by the state legislators. Our state legislators are currently trying to get them to overturn those orders, and the governor did not put those orders out. His state health official put those orders out. So we're doing this because of an order from our health officials, and those health officials are putting orders down to the county level as well. Now, legality wise, it's up to us as a government to make a decision to say, hey, we've had enough. We need to get involved. We need to let the state know we had enough, and we need to overturn this. Now, that's what you guys are deciding today, and I, encourage to look at all the facts, and I have the facts available to you, and I encourage you to discuss what we can do to move forward as a county and as residents here to, even protect ourselves, either way. So I appreciate your time. I have an email. It's harold_Bjork@hotmail. If you want the data, email me or send me an email that I can send it to. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Harold.
Thank you.
Tim, any more comments?
No, there's no more comments.
Okay, I think we've got plenty of time for comments to come in. I'll just give it one more, about 30 seconds here, and then I'll close this part of our meeting. With that, at this time, I'll close the public comment part of our meeting, and we'll move on. With that, commissioners, our agenda now was county commissioner reports. We'll move into that arena. Thank you. First one up is myself. Good morning, fellow commissioners, and I would like to continue on here for myself. First of all, liaison work has been good, moving along, and that type of thing. So there's everybody clicks along. I think probably what I'm hearing most of all is the same as you as commissioners, is of course the funding issues that go on throughout the state, as well as individual arenas. An update on Farson Eden landfill. The permits have all been signed, and construction to just the open pit. Now the transfer station is open. They'll continue business as usual. Just will be done a little differently. The open pit itself, as of this last Monday, with the permits being signed last week, construction was to start closing that open pit and reclaiming it. As much as there was issues moving forward, I'd like to give out a big thank you to Senator Barrasso and his staff, senior advisor Brad Bunning, as well as field advisor Sierra Brown, who assisted Farson Eden, and the engineer Travis, I can't think Travis' last name, but assisted them in making sure that this project got off the ground and got moving. So the board at Farson Eden is especially thankful to be moving forward. So that is an update. Also, another update on water that came out after our last meeting is we do know that the levels in Lake Mead triggered what is referenced as voluntary reduction which is drought contingency plans for Arizona and California. So they have now voluntary reduction plans in place. If the levels in Lake Mead continue to drop and that type thing, as well as in Powell, the next steps down the road a ways, which have to be considered, is there going to be a call on the river and that type thing? And if there is a call, then of course moving forward with that plan. And of course our biggest concern always, and I think most of us realize, is what may happen with Flaming Gorge as a body of water that could be called upon to move into Powell as a backup to fill Mead to meet the demands of water for the lower Colorado basement, i.e. California and those areas. We do also know that based on some of our followings and trickling, that the infamous name of Vermilion is surfacing with the Grasshopper project, they call it, where he's permitting through Utah to take water out of Browns Park area and pipe it north up through near 191, I believe, north into this area, and then east along I-80. Again, too, the big resistance there. Of course, it's just early in the stages of planning as well as permitting. A lot of pushback on that one from what I'm reading from Colorado as well, because that's taking water off the west slopes and moving it to the east slopes, and the west slope of Colorado, again, in some ways feels that that water needs to stay in this basin. So we know that's it's going to be a long haul, but we know it started the conversations, starting the permitting process through Utah for that. Where it goes from there, we'll just monitor it, as several other groups are monitoring as well. Also, the other aspect following closely was this last week, the governor came out with his cuts for the state level, which is the second 10%. Remember back a month ago, the governor announced the first 10%, but also had state agencies prepare a second 10% and a third 10%. We moved into that second tier of $250 million cut at the state level. And primarily 5 agencies making up 2/3 of the state budget were impacted. Health, $90 million, University of Wyoming, $42 million. The other departments, family services, corrections, and that made up the rest of it, Department of Corrections and those types of things. So a total of $250 million. Community colleges was another one at 27.5, Department of Corrections 23, and family services 11.9. He did qualify, if anybody watched, and if they didn't, that he knew that it would impact services and probably eliminate programs, but because of the declining revenue where they were at, they needed to do it, and it felt these were the cuts that had to take place. So they were implemented and moving forward. One of the notes they said that was indicated was he pointed out that 10% people working in the state today, 10% less people working in the state today compared to 10 years ago. As I visited and testified in the revenue meeting, I informed the revenue committee that Sweetwater County had reduced well more than that, over 15 million over the last 10, 12 years. And those were positions that for the most part resulted in those savings from not being replaced, backfilled, and we continued to operate effectively and efficiently due to those. So we did have that conversation. Commissioner Johnson, I just want you to know that was relayed to that revenue committee, and they listened well. So there's still, the governor finally made the realization in his comments. He sensed that the legislation or legislation dealing with, or statutes dealing with public education had very, very little control of. And he said he realized that through the state Supreme Court systems and that they carried a different type of oversight is how I interpreted it. But he said with their $500 million shortfall, he was requesting school districts to do a volunteer 10% cut. So that's what came out of that, those conferences and those types of things. With that, commissioners, that's all I have to report. I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Johnson.
very much appreciate you bringing that up to the state, because I think we stand out as number one as being proactive in what we have done. Then I've had the HR departments updated those numbers for those 10 years, and it's closer to 22 million now. So it's a passing.
Wow.
So
That would have been a good number, because yeah, we'll make sure we publicize that in further conversations. Thank you. That's incredible. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any other questions, commissioners? Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to Commissioner Smith. Good morning, sir. Again.
Good morning, fellow commissioners. Good to see all of you on Zoom anyway. I'll keep it fairly short and sweet this morning. Hospital board meeting. They've been busily meeting and had a special meeting last week. Unfortunately, they do have their regularly scheduled hospital board meeting today. Looks like I probably won't be able to attend that, but will be filled in on it and keep tabs. But they continue to work, especially with the COVID money from the CARES Act, and doing great things there. So really appreciate their work there. At the airport, we'll be hearing from Devin here shortly. So won't steal any of his thunder. We'll just we'll let him speak to the good things that are happening up at the airport here shortly. And then wanted to give you an update on the abandoned vehicle lot as well. It's from John and Megan Liggett. They sent out that they have disposed of 42 cars and trucks recently. And so that's a huge step for them in the right direction. Unfortunately, 12 more have been added because they've been found in different places. So it's an ongoing battle. But that would leave them, if I'm doing my math right, 76, 87. It's about 91 vehicles out there, whether it's cars, trucks, boats, trailers. So they're making some headway. And kudos and thank you very much to Becky Sanchez and also to John De Leon. Appreciate the work that they've been doing and getting this back up and running once again, so that it's a great system. So I do appreciate that. And with that, I will conclude my remarks and ask if there are any questions.
Questions? And no questions?
Good.
All right, good job. Good report. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on, Commissioner Shanefield, good morning.
Good morning. Liaison work is good. It's been very busy. For Economic Development Coalition last Thursday, Ashley Harpstreet with the Wyoming Taxpayers Association was in town, and she gave a very good and thorough yet pretty bleak presentation. She went into depth around the serious financial state that we're in. She talked a little bit about the rainy day fund that is always a hot topic. And as of right now, and what the planning for the upcoming shortage is going to be, it will be extended by June of 2022 is what they are thinking, with the current legislative allocation, along with the $1.2 billion shortfall that's expected this upcoming year. The governor's cut about $250 million as of now. And if the current climate continues, which is expected to, we are going to have to make some major changes. With industrial siting, as you see later in our agenda today, we have met multiple times, and Eric and our Sweetwater County partners have worked really hard to get our portion of the funding agreed upon. We have come up with an agreement that I think is a really fair balance. I just want to say thank you to our Sweetwater County partners. I think that we worked really hard, very respectfully. I think we did a great job. We were very thoughtful about what we did to make the most impact that communities receive the funding that they needed. So I will let Eric talk a little bit more about that later. Christina's been working on the SLIB funds through the CARES funding for our county, and they've come up with some emergency rules and have approved the funding models as of last Thursday. But it sounds like there's some discrepancy around direct distribution and what they're going to have for allowable expenses. It's kind of a mess. It sounds like the grants have already been made, and so they're sorting things out. And she actually just sent me an email with updated grant allocations that were just made public. So Sweetwater County received just over $6 million, City of Green River, $2.4 million, Rock Springs, just over $5 million, Granger, $117,000, Fair Oil, $113,000, Superior, $166,000, almost $167,000, and Wamsutter, just over $168,000. So that is in addition to the healthcare facilities and what they are receiving. We have not had a museum board meeting since our last meeting, but I have been working with their board president and their interim director, as well as John DeLeon, to review some HR legal questions and just support them as they move forward in searching for a new director. We also haven't had a meeting yet since the last meeting with Golden Hour Senior Center. And I'm going to actually set up a time to meet with Jackie and review their needs and see how things are going with the building and everything else. And then I think we need to talk a little bit more about the budget in the future. And I think that our strategic planning meeting that's coming up is going to be a great kickoff for that, since we have so many significant shortfalls this year. I just want to urge our departments and our component units and our outside agencies to start looking at your budgets now, start planning for the future. It is going to be a very tough year financially, and I know we're going to get through it, but the further ahead we can plan for it, I think the better we're going to be in the future. So I'm also looking forward to our first workshop for strategic planning this afternoon. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Shank. Any questions? Thank you, and it's a great message that you presented for the outside agencies in that regarding budget, because it is one that we can't start soon enough. Up next is Commissioner Lloyd. Morning, Commissioner.
Good morning. Thank you. Had a couple board meetings for liaison work. I met with Southwest Counseling last week. We had a meeting by Zoom, as most meetings are by Zoom anymore, and went fairly well, kind of waiting on the final cuts, what they're going to look like. Linda should be having a meeting soon to be able to move forward with that, but everything else seems like it's running well at Southwest Counseling. Had a board meeting for the events complex, which was not Zoom. Got updates on some of the events happening at the events complex now and some of the upcoming events. Larry and his crew are doing the best they can during this time and looking at options as they continue to go through for the rest of the year. Starbus, we had an emergency meeting just to discuss some of the changes in ridership. They've kind of evolved over the last couple months. At the beginning of COVID, they went away from a fixed route system and just went to a door-to-door delivery system. They went back to the fixed route system in late June, early July, with a limited number of people on the buses. And the issue that was coming, there was occasions where they didn't have enough room on the bus to pick someone up, and they would have to wait an hour. So the board did make the decision to open up to full ridership and require masks on the bus, and they worked through the public health department with that. So that was really my liaison work. Couple other things I think that's important. I do have a meeting upcoming with Karen Kelly and juvenile probation. So that we're setting up a time in the next week. So outside of that, that's really it for liaison work. Some of the other things that's happened in the last couple of weeks for me, I did attend the Ashley Herb Street presentation from the State Taxpayer Association I found the information fairly interesting and informative and very helpful. So do appreciate SEDC and Kayla and Eric for getting that set up. It was a very helpful presentation. Want to just thank the Sheriff's Department. Over the last month, they've been involved in some pretty heavy situations, and John and his guys have, the entire department has handled it with like professionals and done a great job. Not only in handling the situations, but how they've shared the information and they've dealt with the situations publicly. And I just think I'd like to make sure I recognize the work that they've done. Also have met with multiple, as always, multiple department heads, elected officials and constituents. And then the last comment too, one last comment is I know sometimes when we have public comments, it's very issue based. We haven't had this much public comment since for a while, and Cindy laughs, but and then sorry, Cindy, but it's, even though it's really issue centric. I do appreciate when folks share, whether it be at the grocery store, or when we're through this forum, through emails, through calls. This is how we kind of get a better beat and feel what the constituents call. And as we look at that, really what the call was today, it's a really polarizing topic that we'll be looking at today. That will be presented. And I just ask that people that they understand we listen to each other and we work together to create a big solution, because as you heard in the public comment, it was about 50-50. And so we'll work through that, but I just want to appreciate everyone that has provided information today during public comment. It's an essential part of us being successful as a commission. So with that being said, that's all I have today, unless there's questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. The questions for Commissioner Lloyd? Comments? Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. Up, Commissioner Johnson. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. First, I have the Public Works report for buildings. The courthouse boiler project is progressing and the boiler should be functional by the end of September, hopefully before it snows. We have run into a couple of delays due to COVID and a small design change, but the project is still progressing. The courthouse roof project will start on September 14th and continue for approximately 6 weeks. We are working on the RFPs for the Justice Center grinder pump project that was budgeted for this year. The project will be designed over the winter and constructed in the spring. Engineering. We are working on analyzing the traffic count data that we have collected over the past 3 months. We are also working on our spring fiscal year 2021 pavement preservation project specifications. The engineering department had a meeting with YDOT to discuss their future projects and how many tons of rotomill tailings the county will receive over the next 3 years from the various YDOT projects. The guardrail on County Road number 33, Flaming Gorge Road, was fixed last week, and we found another guardrail that had been damaged on County Road 106, Farson 2nd East late last week. That guardrail is scheduled to be fixed in 2 weeks pending material availability. Road and bridge. Crews are continuing to prepare the roads for the winter season. They are working on delineators, signs, culverts, and cattle guards all over the county. So that's the extent of the Public Works Department. And again, I can't say enough about Gene and his crews. They're just, they do an outstanding job on top of everything. The roads, if you travel the road, county roads, they're in great condition, and I get at least a lot of favorable comments back as the great job that Gene is doing with the roads. And next thing I have is on the 20th, I attended the CLG meeting in Kimmer, and just would like to report that I was disappointed to see that Kent Conley has lost the election in Lincoln County also. He is the chairman of the Coalition Local Governments, been there since day one, does an outstanding job, and he'll be greatly, it'd be a great loss to the Coalition Local Governments. In that meeting, we had great discussion, continuing on the Public Service Commission relative to the power generation in both Lincoln County and Sweetwater County. our comments continue to be used in that debate, and we very much appreciate that. One last negative comment that I've had from several of my constituents has to do with the election. And that's not me, it's not sour grapes, but there was great comment about the polling places, the locations. And I know, Cindy, you've heard a lot of this because they have told me that when I told them who was responsible for that, they had indicated to me that they had already talked to you about them, but asked me to make it public on their behalf that they were disappointed in the way that the polling places were located. So with that, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any questions for Commissioner Johnson? Thank you. With that, that concludes our commissioner comments, and that almost puts us back on schedule, but let's take a 10-minute break because I think we could use one. So let's come back here at 9:35, and we will start with the tab C, which is amended mill levy form from Mr. Davis, our assessor. Okay, 10-minute break, please, Tim. Thank you. Okay, Tim. Commissioner Johnson back. Thank you. We'll wait for Commissioner Johnson. Thank you, Sally. All right, at this time, I'd like to call this commissioner meeting back to order. And with that, our first action item for under tab C will be the amended mill levy form. And with us is our assessor, Dave Davis. Good morning, assessor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and commissioners. I wish I had some great conspiracy theory on how this error happened, but I don't. It was just something that was missed. We're very fortunate the county treasurer's office noticed when we did the tax roll in the last week or so that we had an error in a mill levy. It was corrected. We are going to, in the future, try to password protect that spreadsheet to stop that from happening in the future. I know the levy was right at one point, but at the time it got to you to be signed, it was not. And that's really all that matters in this story. We are going to take measures to correct it, and we just ask for your approval on the amended form today.
Thank you, assessor. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Davis?
I'd just like to know if Mr. Davis, was that your error or Rob's?
You know, I'm the county assessor, so I guess it's got to be mine.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Davis? The other statement is, thank God for Mr. Slaughter, right?
Yeah, last week, yes.
Thank you. Yes. Any other questions, commissioners? With that, what's your pleasure on the amended mill levy form?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Smith.
I move that we approve the amended mill levy form as presented by Mr. Davis.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the amended mill levy form by Commissioner Smith. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Shanefield. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Davis, and we can move forward with the billing now, right?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have one other comment I'd like to make. The Planning and Zoning Department needs to be commended for the work they've done. They've actually put a link out there on the website to a information regarding property in the Red Desert. Over the last 20, 25 years, we have spikes in people calling, asking for information on the Red Desert, where their property might be, what the access is, what the permitting is, those kinds of things. And the Planning and Zoning Department put together a very, very nice presentation with a link on their website that actually goes through all of the hurdles that could potentially happen with buying property in the Red Desert. And that was we just get the phone call and we direct people to that part of their website. Fantastic tool. They need a huge pat on the back for that. That is something that the public has been has been sorely needed for a long time, and they filled that gap. They should very much be commended for that work.
Thank you, Mr. Sesser. I think Eric's on and he's hearing that and we'll support that. But if not, his liaison, Commissioner Johnson, will be able to also pass that along. Oh, Eric, thumbs up. He heard it. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. And thank you.
I'd like to follow up on that, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
It's not only the Red Desert's been an issue with the P&Z. Over the last years that I've been involved with them, they've done an outstanding job. We get very, very few complaints about P&Z these days, and we used to get them daily in prior years. And it's credit to Eric and his people, not only Jim, but all the other people that work with him down there, including Mark Kotz. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. You're exactly right in your comments of how much it's improved over the years, and Eric appreciates that, and Mark and the other people do too. And but it goes back to leadership of this commission from prior years of identifying that was an arena that needed to really be looked at and cleaned up, not only for the benefit of the county, but for the citizens of the county living in the county. And you're exactly right. Since then, with the work that the previous commission has done and planning and zoning, as well as the support of the present commission, that has moved on and really has been a limelight for the county. So you're exactly right. Thanks for those comments. And Eric, please pass that along to your staff. Assessor Davis, we appreciate you bringing that up so we could address that. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Davis? Did we have a vote on that? Did we call for the question? Yeah, no? Yes? Yeah, we did. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. With that, we'll move on. Tab D now is Human Services Contracts, and with us for that is Miss Lane, our County Clerk. Miss Lane, are you out there? Clerk Lane?
I am. Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. I brought the Human Service Agreements for the Food Bank of Sweetwater County in the amount of $18,853. These are monies that were given during the budgeting session.
Okay. I see that's the only human service contract for us this trip. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe we have 2 more we are waiting on, and then we should have everybody in.
Very good. Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions for Clerk Lane? With no questions, Commissioners, what's your pleasure regarding the Human Services contract for, at this point in time, the Food Bank of Sweetwater County?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Shanefield?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the Human Services contract for the Food Bank of Sweetwater County.
Thank you. And authorize the chairman to sign the attached agreement?
Yes, sir.
I thought that's what I heard. Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Shanefield. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lloyd. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on, under tab E, we have approval of the FFA AIP agreement for the snow removal equipment building at the Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport, as well as and joining us right now under tab E is Kay Marshall, Sweetwater County grants writer, as well as Mr. Brubaker, the airport director. Good morning, Mr. Brubaker. Good morning, Ms. Marshall.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome. The floor is yours. Ms. Marshall.
Sorry about that. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, just real quick, the director of the airport, Devin, is here to present his entitlement grant. I just want to be clear, because it's a joint powers board, this agreement actually does not flow through the county in terms of the financials, the audit, or match money. I don't budget for it. It is completely independent because the airport is a joint powers board. Your name is on the agreement, and that's why you're involved, but I will let Devin take it away.
All right. Good morning, Devin. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you, Christina. This grant before you for approval is a $3,200,001 grant. It's due to rounding why it has that $1 on the end of it. It seems a little weird, but it's how the feds do these grants. This was scheduled to be a $3 million grant. However, due to the CARES Act, the Congress was able to plus up fiscal year 2020 grants for airports to 100% federal. So there is no local match on this specific grant. It is 100% federal dollars at just over $3.2 million. This goes towards the construction of a new maintenance facility, a snow removal equipment and maintenance facility for the airport. We are required to have all of our equipment stored inside a conditioned facility by FAA standards. We cannot store it outside. We cannot, even in the summertime, it is required to be in a conditioned facility. Almost all of our equipment is purchased with grant dollars, and this is their way of not only ensuring that the equipment that they help fund for us has a long, useful life, but it also is able to respond to the needs of the airport in a timely fashion and not out in the weather getting tore apart from the sun and the rain and the sand blasting from the wind up here. So the total project cost is just under 5.1 million. We do have substantial amount of funding coming from YDOT. We've already received 800,000 of that, and we'll be expecting to receive additional funding here in short order. The project construction will start in February and be wrapped up by October of next year.
Thank you, Devin. Commissioners, any questions for Devin regarding this grant?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Smith.
I swear between Christina and Devin, those two are a force to be reckoned with when it comes to finding money. So kudos to both of them. Much appreciated for the work they do, and keep it up. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Other comments, commissioners? My comment just echoes Commissioner Smith's, and always impressed and continue to be. And I commend also the Joint Powers Board out there at the airport to continue to move forward and provide the necessary infrastructure and that's so important to the basis of Sweetwater economics and what's going on. So I echo same as Commissioner Smith. Other comments, commissioners? With that, commissioners, what's your pleasure with this regarding this FFA AIP agreement for snow removal equipment building at the airport?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Smith.
I will gladly move that we approve and authorize the chairman to sign electronically, apparently, the Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Program Agreement for the snow removal equipment building at the Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport.
We have a motion by Commissioner Smith to approve and authorize the chairman to sign by digital signature. Good attention to detail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shanefield. Any further discussion, commissioners? No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good job, Devin. Good job, everybody. Excellent. Our next agenda item is tab F, which is airport update, the COVID-19 and commercial terminal modernization program. With that, joining us or staying with us is Mr. Brubaker, the director of the airport. Mr. Brubaker, the floor is yours. Is there anybody with you today, Devin, regarding your update, board members?
There is not. It is just me.
Okay.
He doesn't need any help.
No, sometimes he has people that we want to recognize them too, that they're here. We don't want to forget about them. Okay, the floor is yours, Devin. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've provided a brief presentation for you. I also shared my screen here. Thanks, Tim, for allowing me to do that. And I believe you all have a copy of it in your packet as well. Just to start out, we'll give some recognition to those board members that Doc was talking about. Just wanted to make sure people recognize who serves on our board. We have an excellent board here at the airport. Fire Chief Jim Wamsley from the city of Rock Springs, Brett Pizzato out at Simplot, Dr. Pete Jensen, Mayor Pete Rust, and Kelly Sagahara. And all 5 of them are phenomenal board members, and they have a great vision for our airport and our community. So we're excited to have them. To start out, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update on where we're at with COVID-19 impacts. Just to share some information with you to kind of talk about the devastation that our industry has felt since March. The air transportation system really got decimated starting the second week of March and reached record lows in April. 95.3% of the most domestic airline travel got wiped out in the month of April. So over 95% of all air travel in the United States was gone. It resulted in 2/3 of the world's passenger jets being grounded. If you look at the picture in this slide, that's Atlanta Hartsfield Airport, and those are all Delta Airlines aircraft parked on runways and taxiways because there was no demand for the air travel, so they parked all the aircraft. That's just one picture of hundreds you can find all over the internet. The depressed demand continued into August with only 1/3 of the nation's passenger traffic remaining. Here locally, the numbers have been pretty brutal. In March, we were down 47.9%, April down 97%, May down 91%, June down 80%, July down 74%, and in August down 65%. Total since March, we're down 75% in passengers compared to 2019 numbers for the same period. So the numbers have not been great. The advanced bookings for September and October are starting to look a little bit better. It looks like they will fall in line with September numbers, which if you look on the slide when I prepared this last week, the data we had then showed that there was going to be a reduction in the 85 to 90%. But the latest data we received this morning shows that the late close-in bookings are rebounding. So we'll see probably September and October numbers look like August numbers, which I'm thankful for, but it's still not that great. Couple things, we also were impacted severely on the general aviation side. On our general aviation traffic, it's hard to give you an exact percentage of what we were down, but I can tell you our fuel sales since March are down 20% compared to last year. And fuel sales and general aviation traffic account for 90% of our revenue here at the airport. So while the reductions aren't as severe as we thought they were going to be back in April, they are still fairly severe compared to what we're used to. The impact to our operations, we've had to take a lot of steps to try to build consumer confidence back in flying here at the airport. And the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about that. We've enhanced our cleaning procedures, as has every company, every business in our community and across this country. We obviously have a lot of touch points in an airport, and we have a lot of crowds that come through the airport. So one of the things we did early on is we restricted access to the terminal to only passengers, employees, and those providing critical assistance to passengers if they had any kind of disability. Otherwise, you were not allowed in the terminal building. So you had to meet and greet your family members out on the curbside. Those restrictions are still in place today. We're not strictly enforcing them, but we do have the signage up, just trying to minimize the amount of crowds we have in the terminal. So we don't have a lot of space for social distancing in our current facility. So we're trying to minimize those crowds. Our janitorial services are all contracted out. However, we as the airport and also our partners at TSA, SkyWest, and the rental cars have also been stepping up and helping us keep the terminal clean and sanitized. The airline takes care of the hold room, we take care of the public area, and we've just worked as a great team to keep things going. On the staffing side, We already run at a bare bones staffing level. We have a total of 9 employees that manage the airport, operate the airport. We have to maintain the hours. The FAA and TSA made it clear at the beginning of this pandemic that we cannot take any shortcuts in terms of our occupancy of the airport, nor our maintenance of the airport. So we've had to maintain our staffing levels. We did, however, enter into a modified schedule where our employees were not overlapping. So that way we could avoid any kind of cross-contamination should anybody get the COVID-19. So we made those changes. We've since reversed those changes and put other measures into place to protect our employees. But we've been working and monitoring the situation and making changes as needed. Terminal, I already talked about the restrictions we put in place there. And then the item that really is key, I think, to our long-term future as an airport is while the industry is forecasting a return to 2019 numbers not until 2023 or 2024, it is our board's and my belief that if we keep our foot on the gas pedal and focus on the long-term future of the airport, it's going to pay significant dividends in a time where there's an immense amount of funding from the federal government and an immense amount of opportunity in the construction industry for good bids. So we're looking at keeping our foot on the gas pedal and moving in a positive direction. And on that note, the rest of the presentation I have for you is an update on our commercial terminal project. And we're pretty excited for what this project's going to bring to Sweetwater County. Obviously, you guys are all familiar with this project. It's been in front of you for a couple of years now. It's been in the news. I've spoken individually with most of you, trying to keep you up to date on the project. So I'm going to give a little bit of a background on the project, and I'm going to do my best not to read these slides to you. But just a quick context, our existing airport was built back in the early 1940s. The original terminal was built over at the general aviation side of the airport, and it operated as our commercial terminal up until 1980 timeframe when the existing building we're in today was constructed. That other terminal building was converted to the GA terminal and has since been torn down to make way for our new facility that we opened in 2018. Since the opening of our existing commercial terminal, TSA was deployed in the aftermath of 9/11, bringing personnel, equipment, and new space and process requirements. And that has really handicapped our terminal layout that was designed pre-9/11. In both the 2003 and 2012 master plan, we're required to do a master plan about every 10 years by the federal government. And both those master plans called for an expansion or new terminal. Both of those plans called for it. The first time that the terminal was put into our 6-year capital plan was in the summer of 2013, a couple years prior to my arrival here in Sweetwater County. And when it was put in our capital plan, it was scheduled for 2019. And since that time, we've been moving the project back up until about 2 years ago when our passenger traffic just skyrocketed with all of our efforts on our air service. We saw a 56.7% growth in employments between calendar year 2016 and calendar year 2019, making our current terminal very, very small. Some of the goals that we have for this project is to elevate the appearance and function of the gateway to our community. An airport often informs a traveler's first and last impression of a city or a region. It must mirror the community that it serves, and it must provide for a positive and memorable experience at a facility that is, in the best of times, busy, crowded, and stressful. So it's important that we provide a reminder of what our community really is, and our current facility does not do that. We want to develop the terminal to be capable of accommodating the future needs of the region. We don't want to build this or do this project and then a year later realize that we didn't do it right. We need to make sure that it's for the long haul. Part of the goal will be to increase the hold room capacity to accommodate the peak hour forecast of 136 passengers. And that is based on forecasting that the FAA, forecasting models that the FAA forces us to use. And they project that in 2037, the peak hour forecast of the hold room will be 136. So we must design it to that to secure federal funding. We plan to increase the TSA checkpoint space to accommodate the next generation of screening equipment. And it's not even the next generation, it's the current generation, but we don't have space for the current generation. So it'll allow us to get the current generation and be equipped for the future generation. It'll also move check bag screening behind the wall and introduce automatic screening technology. If anybody's flown out of the airport, you probably realize that every bag that you check is hand checked. It's opened by an individual and searched. And for our airport size, we should have automated screening technology. We just don't have the space for it. The new terminal facility will have space for the automated technology that will allow only suspect bags to be hand searched. It'll also introduce traditional baggage claim equipment. I know that our baggage slides and our baggage claim are a bit nostalgic, but to make sure we can handle the peak demand of traffic, we will have a baggage belt like you find at other airports. We will also introduce a passenger boarding bridge to improve the customer experience. So when you're boarding a flight in the middle of January and it's 10 below zero and blowing 60 miles an hour, the only time you're going to step foot outside is between your car and the terminal. And the rest of the time you'll be able to be in a jet bridge boarding that aircraft, providing a higher level of customer service. A little bit about the schedule, just to get everybody up to speed. In the summer of 2019, the terminal area plan and conceptual design for the terminal was completed with the help of the city and the county partnering on funding that work. In November 2019, we received the environmental determination from the FAA, giving us a categorical exclusion, basically meaning we don't have to go through an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement for the project. On April 30th, 2020, the FAA announced the intent to award $4.9 million in supplemental AIP funding at 100% federal. On May 29th, the FAA notified the airport of its intent to seek $6.7 million in fiscal year 21 discretionary funding and encouraged the airport to move forward with design and bidding to meet the April 2021 grant issuance deadline. On June 19th, we issued an RFP for construction manager at risk services. We received 7 proposals. The airport had a robust selection committee consisting of one of your county commissioners, Jeff Smith, our liaison. He was on there as well. The committee selected Sletton Construction of Wyoming. They have offices in Cody and Laramie. There were no Sweetwater County contractors that submitted for this project. So we did select a Wyoming contractor. On August 12th, the airport board awarded a CMAR contract to Sletton Construction and also awarded a design services agreement to TO Engineers for the design of the terminal. On August 13th, just a couple weeks ago, the FAA notified the airport that $6.7 million of AIP discretionary funds have been successfully programmed for fiscal year 21 and to expect award in April or May of 2021. A little bit more schedule. We have a deadline of December 1st to apply for the Wyoming Business Council grant, which is our intention to apply for. We would be in front of you in the coming months for a resolution supporting that application. In April or May of 2021, we expect to be awarded $11.6 million in supplemental and discretionary AIP grants. That is the $6.7 million that I had mentioned that was programmed and the $4.9 that has already been announced. April 2021 is when we would expect the Wyoming Business Council grant award if it is approved. May 2021, we would expect a commencement of construction with phase 1, utilities, site work, and foundations. We would finish up design during summer of 2021 on the vertical aspects of construction and launch into construction during the summer of 2021. We expect additional grant funds to come in from WYDOT in October of 2021 and October of 2022. And we expect completion in October of 2022 on the project as we sit here today. A little bit about the funding allocation. This is a breakdown for you. It shows all the numbers that I've showed or talked to you about so far. The ones I want to highlight is that there will be a local component to this project at this point. It has significantly diminished from the last time that I publicly spoke with you guys about it. When we last spoke, it was during the 6 penny discussion, and it was around 3.3 million is what we were asking in 6 penny money. Thankfully, due to the additional FAA money that has been programmed, which is the full amount we asked for, but we did not expect to see, our local match on this project, $18.5 million project, is down to 1.3 million. Some of that we will be able to cover with customer facility charges, passenger facility charges, TSA, and Vail grants. You see there's 4 to be determined numbers there at the bottom. Those are all amounts that we are working through and developing, and those will further reduce that local match. Right now, if the local match were to remain at 1.35 million, with what we know we have on hand with customer facility charges and passenger facility charges, if the joint powers agreement split was used, it would be about 850,000 for the county and 425,000 for the city of Rock Springs for that local match. I've spoken with most of you and explained that we technically do not need to expend that local match until fiscal year 2022. However, you'll see in the next slide, we do have a bit of a challenge in front of us of determining how we can continue to pay our engineers and architects to finish out design until the grants are formally awarded in the spring. And the next steps, like I just mentioned, is trying to figure out how we secure gap funding to cover the cost of design until grant funds can be drawn against, whether that might be debt service, an advance from the city or the county, or other ideas that we come up with or you guys have. We're all ears trying to find a solution there. We'll continue to work on completing design and bidding to allow for a May 2021 phase 1 commencement. Apply for the Business Council grant by December 1st. I'll obviously work with Crisino on that as we draw closer to that time frame. And we'll continue to seek unique project revenue sources to drive the local match lower. I listed off the other items. The item that's on this list that wasn't on the previous slide is utility rebates. Those can be rather significant on a project of this size as well. So we'll be looking at all options to reduce that local match. And then the last item on the next step is securing the local match. And in my conversations with you guys, I absolutely recognize, our board recognizes that the economic times for the city and the county are not good. And we know that this is not a foregone conclusion that you guys are going to say yes to matching the funds on this project. So we plan to work over the coming months to work with you, your staff, the city and their staff, to find a way to cover the local match so we can make this project happen. The next couple slides are just some renderings of the project. If you look on the left side of this, it's our current facility. The right side is the proposed, the conceptual drawings. These will obviously change as we get into schematic design a little bit, but this was the conceptual design we developed during the last phase. This is a layout of expanded parking and where the proposed addition will go for the terminal. It'll go on the east side of the existing terminal. Rental car parking will get relocated, and there'll be an expansion of the parking lot to accommodate that rental car expansion and the increased traffic flow that we see. A little bit more close in detailed of the expansion plans for the terminal. You'll see the hold room is rather large. The checkpoint is expanded. There's a public viewing area that will look out onto the airfield and also a waiting area. The baggage claim area is there as well. So that's the proposed conceptual floor plan right now. This talks about eligibility. You'll hear me talk about this a lot on this project. The FAA will only pay for certain parts of the project. This is based on the conceptual design. You'll see the green areas are Airport Improvement Program eligible. Currently, that's 71%. The green, blue, and orange areas are PFC eligible, Passenger Facility Charge eligible. Unfortunately, we're not big of enough airport to generate enough PFC income to cover all of those costs. So that's where the Business Council, YDOT, and local funds come into play. The brown areas are based on a proration. So if 71% of the building's eligible, 71% of those support areas are eligible for funding. That's like mechanical rooms and janitorial rooms and so forth. And then the gray areas are not eligible. So that would be TSA offices, that would be rental car areas, and that would be airport admin offices. We will work with TSA to secure funding for their space, and we will use customer facility charges to help cover the cost of the rental car spaces. So that's kind of a breakdown on the terminal layout. Here's some two-dimensional elevation views of the project. You'll notice that the big canopy, the Cold War era canopy that's out front of the terminal will go away, and we'll get a more modern front appearance that allows people to walk out of the terminal and experience the beautiful Wyoming skies and beautiful weather that we have most of the year here. So we're pretty excited for that. Just more building elevations. You can kind of ignore the pet relief area up in the left-hand corner. We're actually required by the Department of Transportation to have a pet relief area as part of this project. So it'll either be inside the building or it'll be right outside the building with access from the hold room. But that is a mandatory requirement from the federal government now to take care of service animals. Here's some closer in renderings of the conceptual design. And once again, you should have all of these in your packets, so I'm kind of moving through them fairly quickly. One thing I'd love to point out, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse or not. Can you see my mouse moving on the screen?
Yep.
So these light fixtures, it seems like a very small detail, but these light fixtures hanging, you'll see them in a couple different areas of the plans. Those are actually the light fixtures that we saved out of our 1929 hangar when we tore it down. We saved those light fixtures. We're going to get them lamped and rewired and use them in our terminal building. The other thing that's not in this rendering that I'm hoping to include, we saved our 1940s beacon that we replaced this year, the really tall beacon that's been at this airport since its inception. And it is my hope to actually have it installed in this hold room as a kind of a museum piece right in the middle of the hold room. So we're pretty excited for that as well. This is in the baggage claim area. You'll see there's a lot of windows, a lot of lighting, a lot of daylighting. If you've been, I think all of you have been in our current terminal, and it's pretty dark. There's not a lot of opportunity for daylighting, so opportunity to bring some of those lights in. The wood, we're in discussions whether we're going to be able to use some of the wood from the old hangar that we tore down that we saved, or if we're going to be able to use some snow fence wood that gets salvaged off the snow fences along I-80. So that's trying to bring some of the local flair in there. And here is a video fly through, and that's going to be the last thing I'll have for you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have or get answers to you if I don't have the answers right away. But this is just a short video to show you a fly through of all the spaces. Don't put a lot of weight into colors that are in this or textures because those will all be determined during schematic design, the next phase of design.
So you got the doors that don't have to open. That's going to be awesome.
I won't tell you all the names I have for all the people. I've watched this enough that I've named all of the people walking through the terminal now.
Wow. Wow.
As you see this, you'll notice that there's a lot of elements of the existing building that have remained, and part of that is because of the structural design of the existing building. Does not allow us to make major modifications to it without extreme expenditures. The way the structural integrity of the building is, we have to kind of work within the confines of it. Otherwise, we'd have to build an entirely new terminal. So this is pretty exciting. We'll eventually get a full body imaging machine, so your screening process will go a whole lot quicker for those customers that have had knee replacements, hip replacements that go through a pat down every single time. that should eliminate those needs. And this is the new hold room with a nice view out over Aspen Mountain. Can't really see it in this rendering, but that's where the view of Aspen Mountain comes in, and then the jet bridge. I wish we had a 757 operating here. That's there, but I think that's actually a A321, but it's hard to tell in the renderings.
I don't know, Devin. It looks a lot like what we have already. I don't know.
This will be automated exit lanes. The doors will open, but it'll have automation built into it so that you can't go the opposite direction for security purposes. And that's a requirement of security regulations. We'll go back to 3 rental car counters. Right now we only have 2. We'll go back to 3 so we can have 3 companies here. And there's the baggage claim I spoke about. And that is it. So happy to answer any questions you guys have. Stop the share here and answer any questions you have.
Very good. It was very good update, Devin. Did a great job. Commissioners, any questions for Devin?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
Devin, first of all, that's excellent presentation. Well done.
Thank you.
But since the final design isn't completed yet, as you've indicated, do you have an estimate of what the total cost of this project is going to be at this point?
We do, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. We are estimating $18.5 million total. That's with all design, engineering fees, and utilities. One of the things I did not mention is we have to run a whole new natural gas line up to the airport all the way from Middle Baxter, because the reg station down there at that intersection and the gas line feeding the airport are at maximum capacity. So for us to add any facilities here at the airport, including hangar space or this terminal or any other future projects, we have to upgrade that natural gas line. And that's included in the cost estimate, nearly $500,000 to do that.
Thank you.
Other questions, commissioners? No. Lauren, none. Roy, Jeff? No. Very well done, Devin. We appreciate the update, and it's an exciting project, and it's a good project for Sweetwater County and its citizens. And we appreciate the fact that your board and you are on the same page and have a vision for this county and are working aggressively towards meeting that vision. And I agree with you. Keeping your eye on the end game will be a benefit for Sweetwater County, and it'll certainly set the stage for moving forward with economic development, especially as we work to improve that Middle Baxter area for economics. So commend you and your board, commend you for staying so diligent and staying with it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. And if I might just ask that if anybody has some unique ideas, suggestions, things for us to look at on how we can come up with that gap funding for design, please let me know. I'm working on it diligently, and I've also asked the city if they have ideas. And if something sounds like it might stick, I'll come back and present that to you guys at a future meeting. But you will be seeing me over the next couple months for Business Council grant resolutions and additional grants that we expect to be coming in from the feds as well. So,
all right. Thank you, Devin. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions for Devin, we'll move forward. Moving into our agenda, tab G, which is approval to submit the USDA Community Facilities Direct Loan and Grant Program pre-application. So with us, Ms. Marshall and Mr. Legursky. Christina, the floor is yours.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, you asked staff to bring this agenda item back on for consideration. So just to be clear, it's to consider submitting a pre-application to USDA for a community facilities direct loan and grant. And this would be for what is referred to as the Consolidated Facility Lagoon Road Project. To be clear for the public, what this entails for, it's a consolidation, and Gene can get more into it, but for public works, it combines road and bridge, fleet maintenance, county engineering, and facilities into one building. The square footage is 36,315 square feet. And then the second part of the complex is for the Wildland Fires Department at 21,402 square feet. The total budget is $21,913, or $21,913,982. So with this application, there's been some confusion. Last Friday, I had a conference call with USDA. They confirmed at that time that last year, only $100,000 was available in grants. And they also confirmed that Sweetwater County would not be eligible for any grant funding assistance based on our medium income wages in Sweetwater County. This is what we had expected based on prior experience. So to go forward, a pre-application is only for eligibility to be considered for the loan program. It actually will not tell us how much we would be eligible for in the loan program. If we are eligible, we would have to submit a more complex application. They would want to check on the project to see its size and scope. We cannot bid out the project until that portion of the project is reviewed by USDA. The current interest rate is 2.375%. And so this is some additional information I thought I'd bring forward. Gene, do you have anything to add?
No, the only thing, we've discussed this at length, this project. I think everybody is well aware of it. I think this is a great opportunity to seek outside funding. It brings the cost of the total project down. We don't know how much, but we don't know until we answer the questions and go through the process. With that, I think it's a good outlet for other things. If this works successfully, we can do other things with this. It's another revenue stream possibly for the county for other projects. I think this is just a win-win situation and a way to look for other funding opportunities. Much like Devin just did. It's kind of the same thing.
Very good. Thank you. Anything else, Christina, to add?
Mr. Chairman, no, I have nothing else to add unless there's some questions for me.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for Gene or Christina?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Shanefield.
I don't have a calculator in front of me. Gene, Christina, have either one of you done the calculations on what the interest would be at with that loan? With the current interest rate?
We have not, because we don't know how much of a loan will be. We don't know if it'll be 10 million, 12 million, 15 million. We don't know what it will be.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Shanefield, Commissioner Shanefield?
Yeah, one follow-up. Did they give any indication on matching funds or anything of such, and if they fund 100% of projects, or if they have regulations or guidelines around that?
Christina, do you want to answer that, or you want me to?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Shanefield, to me, they did not at all give any indication.
Thank you.
To me, they did, but they weren't secure about it. They said that it sounded like a great project. They said we could be up to 15 million, but they couldn't comment on that until they saw the paperwork and the follow-up paperwork. It's all speculative right now until we actually get the papers in their hand and have them go through the process.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Shanefield?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, okay. Commissioners, other comments? Any other comments? Okay. With that, there are no comments. I think we've discussed it and we talked about it. We brought it back, if I remember correctly, at the bequest of to look at it again. And a grant, it's just to do an application with no commitments, but yet we'd have an understanding of possibly what be available. Is that correct, Mr. Legursky?
I don't know if we would get the answer on the pre-application, but it would determine eligibility, and then we went through
Eligibility.
we would find out.
And I believe that was a request of one of our other commissioners to move forward with that. Is that correct, Commissioner Smith?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's in support of that. So commissioners, with that, if there's no more questions, I will ask you, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman?
May I ask?
Okay, wait a minute.
One more question.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Is there a expiration date on this? So if we do the pre-approval, do we have to apply within 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, or do you know that?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smith, I did ask that. They did not answer to that question. They thought it was kind of odd to ask.
We are kind of odd, so that's a perfect question for us. Yeah.
If the shoe fits, wear it. Right? Okay. Other questions, Commissioner Smith? Okay, then I'll give the floor, I believe, to Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve and authorize the chairman to sign the USDA Community Facilities Direct Loan and Grant Program pre-application forms for the Sweetwater County Consolidated Facility Lagoon Road project.
Okay, we have a motion to approve with the chairman authorized to sign. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We've got a second. Any further discussion, commissioners?
Yeah, I'd like to make a quick comment regarding this. I reopened this with my vote last time, and I want to make it very clear to the constituents that I'm willing to look at what the grant and opportunities are, but I am not willing to really move forward in this project and I think my quote last week was dirt cheap to free, but I think we have to explore the options. But if it isn't dirt cheap to free, I would not move forward with the building. So I just want to make sure there's a clarification on why I'm voting yes, but my overall feelings with the project.
Well, okay, thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. Any other comments, commissioners, or discussion?
Can I have a roll call vote, Mr. Chairman, please?
Yes, when we get there, I have one discussion item is Commissioner Lloyd, you had mentioned grants. I believe, if I understand our grants writer, Ms. Marshall, that we did hear that we would not qualify for grants. Is that correct? So it's purely a loan?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lloyd, USDA confirmed on Friday that we would not be eligible for any USDA loan funding. This would be in search of a loan in which the current interest rate is 2.375%. Jean has been providing me with a lot of information about the project. I've been trying to look at other options for funding. I've not seen any. So regarding USDA, that is to answer your question.
Okay, can I back up for a minute, Ms. Marshall, with what you just said? You just made the comment that we would not qualify for any USDA loan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say grant. I apologize.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that's clarified because, and that type of thing. So we're purely looking at see it not only if we qualify for a loan, but how much we may qualify for.
Mr. Chairman, you are exactly correct.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Outside of that, any more discussion, commissioners? We've had a request for a roll call. So Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Lloyd.
Yes.
Commissioner Shanefield.
No.
Commissioner Wendling. Yes. So we will go ahead and do the loan application and of course with the idea that there's no commitment. So the motion has carried 4-1. Thank you very much. Moving on to our agenda, tab H, the DEQ permit application for Lagoon Road Consolidated Facility. Mr. Legursky, that's up for you.
Mr. Chairman, this is part of the wrap up for getting the design completed for the Lagoon Road project. Excuse me. This is the Chapter 3 permit to construct. Anytime you add to a water or sewer system, you have to go through this process. The complete plans get shipped off to DEQ in Lander. They go through them, have their comments based on Chapter 3 regulations, and get back to the design if they need to switch anything around, and they grant us a permit to construct. Once that permit is done and finalized, the engineer signs off on it that it was done to the standards of DEQ, and the permit is finalized. This permit does not have an expiration. Well, it has an expiration date of 18 months, but you can always reapply. This is critical though in the design to make sure that everything's done and tight. And if DEQ has any questions, they get back with us, we modify it, get it back, and get the permit. So there's no other questions that pop up down the line.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Legursky. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Legursky?
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
Nope, wait a minute. Had Commissioner Lloyd up first. Let's go.
I'll let Jim go first.
You go ahead. I'm afraid you'll marinate longer.
I'll marinate all day, but Gene, just a quick question and clarification. So the DEQ permit is required to be able to finish the drawings that we've already paid for and agreed to do, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Commissioner Smith, you're up.
So the DEQ permit is required to finish up the drawings.
It is.
Thank you. That's perfect. That's just what I was going to.
That was an echo with a little different tone. So anyhow, any other questions, Commissioner?
Twins, I'm telling you, twins.
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
I think it's very obvious that it costs us nothing to do this, and so we need to have it. It's more information we need. So I'd make a motion to approve the application for the consolidated facility to the DEQ permit.
And authorize chairman to sign, Commissioner Johnson?
Of course.
Thank you. I knew that was in there. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Johnson, a second by Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Gene, go ahead and get that so they have that part of it, okay?
Okay.
All right, up next is tab I, which is a letter to suspend the contract with EDA Architects Incorporated for the Sweetwater County Lagoon Road Consolidated Facilities Project. Commissioners, Mr. Legursky is here at our request from our last meeting. Mr. Legursky.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to apologize to John DeLeon. I forgot to put him as a presenter on this. I used an old copy of it and just cut, copy, and paste, and it did not work correctly. So we have talked about this letter as you guys directed us to. John drafted it up. We talked to EDA to make sure that they understood the contract as we understood the contract, and have come up with this notice of suspension for this project. John, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think you've covered it, Gene. But no, nothing further.
Okay, we have the item presented, and any questions for Mr. Legursky or Mr. DeLeon, commissioners?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
Gene, in one of the meetings that we had with the architects, there was a question about possibly suspending a portion of it, and that being that depending on the availability of funding, et cetera, it might be better to only go forward with a portion of it. And obviously, in my opinion, if we went forward with a portion of it would be the road and bridge portion of this thing. Is there any benefit to suspending only a portion of it, i.e. the suspend the wildfire portion of the project?
Mr. Johnson, there is. We can suspend all of it. We can suspend some of it, part of it, whatever you guys want. To me, with the climate and everything that there is out there, I understand that there is a budget crunch, but looking at the FDA or USDA grants and everything, we don't know the answer to that. But if we did build the public works facility and we could get it for $3 million, I think we should do it. But that's not my choice. That's your guys's. And we are just following the direction of what you guys gave us to do, to suspend the complete project past the bidding phase for the whole entire project as we were directed last month.
Just follow up on that, Gene. So what would your recommendation be to, you're in charge of all facilities. One of the concepts was the sale of the old facilities to partially fund this. That enters into it at some point in time too, but what would your recommendation to do today be for the suspension?
My recommendation would be to suspend the fire portion of it and go with the public works facility. And that may sound self-serving, and it is in a way, because I think that the county can recognize a lot of operational gains from consolidating everybody. We'll be able to get rid of 2 buildings. We would not be able to get rid of the 3rd building because fire would still occupy that one. But we'd be able to get rid of 2 buildings. We'd consolidate everybody. Our efficiencies would increase as far as road and bridge goes. We're looking at talking further down the way of offering retirement incentives. Chances are those would hit road and bridge because we are of an advancing age at road and bridge. And we would be able to better look at that if we were all consolidated and redoing the county, to be able to not potentially come back and ask you guys for future employees to replace those. We've already discussed the operational efficiencies and the multitudes of just mechanics and tools that we have to buy for 2 different shops. That goes without saying. When you consolidate that, you can get rid of that. But that, like I said, that is strictly my opinion. And since I was asked for it, I'll give it.
Thank you, Gene. Appreciate that. Any other questions for Mr. Legursky or Mr. De Leon, commissioners? Okay, we have before us the suspension letter and to authorize the chairman to sign. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Johnson?
I make a motion that we suspend a portion of the architect's work, and that portion would be for the wildfire facility until some future date when it might be more economically available, for funds available for that project.
Okay, we have a motion to authorize only a partial of the project.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Just a minute, Commissioner Shanefield. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. So now for discussion, Commissioner Shanefield.
My question is for Mr. John De Leon, that we already voted 3-2, and that included this letter to suspend the whole project. What is moving forward? This has also not been put on the agenda specifically as a portion for discussion.
So if I may intervene, you have a question for Mr. De Leon, which is the same question as I have, is previous meeting, we made a motion and it passed. So since it passed, John, what's the procedures? Did we follow or?
Yes, I do. Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Shanefield. So in terms of notice, the notice was covered the potential suspension of the whole project, absent, of course, the construction document phase. And so because the notice was covered the entire scope, addressing a smaller portion of the scope contained notice as well. And so the board can certainly address the motion that is currently on the table. And should that pass, then that would be the decision of the commission. If it doesn't, then the commission can certainly address the full scope of the notice that's been provided. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Shanefield?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gina Young, not really. We already voted to end the project at this point and push it back to January. So how would it be now a change in that previous vote?
Again, Commissioner, I think it's, again, I think the decision belongs to the commission, all 5 members. Again, the legal component is, has notice been provided of a potential suspension that covers Part A and B. Currently on the table is just Part A, and the commission can decide that in whole, can decide it in part. I think, again, I think the notice component has been provided, and it would be up to the whole commission to determine if you proceed with the whole notice or part of the notice that's been provided. So it's still a full commission decision, and you as commissioners can decide if you proceed in whole or in part.
Any other questions, Commissioner Shanefield? Any other questions for the commissioners? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just one other comment, Mr. Chairman. In the meeting with the architects, they indicated that if it would be better to cut costs if we would narrow down as to what we were talking about. That's the reason that I've taken the position I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Shanefield.
I have a comment, not question, but this project keeps coming back, and it seems as though to me that this is a dire straits trying to bring it back yet again. And I am still very firmly against moving forward with any amount of this project unless it's completely 100% free, which we don't know yet, because we just approved the pre-application. We've known, or we are told that we do not qualify for grant funding through USDA, and I'm not willing to put us in that type of a financial situation in our current atmosphere.
Thank you, Commissioner Shanefield. Any other discussion? Okay, with that, I'll call for the question, and it'll be a roll call vote. And what we're voting on is a letter of suspension, not for the entire project, but for a portion of it. And that portion would be the fire department portion, moving forward with the road and bridge portion. Is that correct? With that, roll call vote. Commissioner Johnson, you made the motion?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Lloyd?
No.
Commissioner Shanefield?
No.
Commissioner Wendling? No. Now, going back to the original letter for suspension, it's for the entire project as was requested and passed in the last meeting by a, again, split vote. Commissioners, any discussion on the letter of suspension for the entire project? No discussion or questions? Commissioners, what's your pleasure? And authorizing the chairman to sign.
I'd so move that we send a letter as presented, ceasing the entire project at this, suspending the project at this point, the entire project at this point.
We have a motion for signing the letter and submitting it for the entire project. Do we have a second?
And allowing the chairman.
And allowing the chairman to sign. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shanefield. Any further?
Mr. Chairman, can I interrupt on that motion?
Sure.
That is not what the letter says. The letter says that we need to still complete the construction document phase, not suspend the whole project. So I want to make sure the motion's clear. And that is still my direction.
Would Commissioner Lloyd like to change his motion?
Yeah, that we would suspend after the completion of the drawings. Is that right, Gene? Yes.
Okay, and that includes your DEQ permit, right, Gene?
That's part of the
permits and some right of ways and stuff that we're currently working on. Yes.
Very good. So that's the way it is, just so we can finish that. Commissioner Shanefield, you will still second it?
Yes.
All right, now discussion. Thank you, Gene. Discussion? No further discussion? Again, a roll call vote for and authorizing the chairman to sign the letter of suspension. Commissioner Lloyd, you made the motion.
Yes.
Commissioner Shanefield.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
No.
Commissioner Wendling, yes. Motion moves 4-1. And Commissioner Johnson, I imagine you'd like it noted that you voted no?
That's correct.
All right. Motion carries. So we'll get the letter signed and get that taken care of. Moving forward, we have Mr. Legursky still with us for tab J, and that is discussion of opening the Big Sandy Youth Center. Mr. Legursky, welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Chairman. What this is discussion on opening the Big Sandy Youth Center. As you guys know, when COVID hit, schools closed, we closed the Big Sandy Youth Center. We have not opened that youth center back up. It does serve between 12 to 24 youth in the Farson, Eden area after schools most days. I have spoken with Tim Lionberger, and in the 10th continuation order, we need to have some clarification, but we can either operate under 6, which is child cares and home daycares, or we can also operate underneath the K-12 schools, colleges, and universities. All of them are doable with advanced cleaning, you know, drop-off space, all that stuff that they're probably used to at school. I guess my worry is, and the reason why I bring this up is, you know, if we're looking at cutting costs, should we be doing this? And I'll leave that up to you guys. I think it is a good thing. We don't have it in any other communities but Farson, but it is a good thing for the Farson, and I know that it's needed and it is used up there, but that is not my decision. That's just information I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Legursky. Commissioners, questions?
What kind of costs are we talking in that case?
We have one.
We're talking
We have
additional
one
cleaning costs.
We have one part-time person for approximately 15 to 18 hours a week up there, and then the cost to maintain the facility.
And that position's already budgeted for, though, correct? I mean, it's not new or different or anything.
No, it's been budgeted ever since we took over the rec board. It's been a budgeted position, but it can go to cash carryover.
Would that staff be doing the cleaning as well, or do we need to bring somebody else in to?
The staff does the cleaning. The only thing we do is maintain the building.
Yeah, I see no reason not to then. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Any other commissioners' comments?
Likewise, I agree with Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Other commissioners? No other comments? I'll comment on it. I think we budgeted for it. Gene, I think through this year, I think we made a commitment when we did our budgets. We dipped into our reserves to take care of our budget this year, as well as carryover. And I think we made the commitment to everybody in the county that was part of that budget that we would be there for the amounts that we committed to. Any additional amounts, so that will require quite a conversation amongst us as commissioners based on input from our accountants and that type of thing. So I think we hold with it. I think it's important to that community, as it is important to any other community that has had that for young people. So I personally think we move forward with it as long as we can keep it covered and that type of thing. So I'm aboard.
Okay, we'll open it. It's trying to get open next Monday.
And we don't need a motion on that, do we? No, I don't think so. So Roy or Lauren, if you feel differently, now's the time, or we're moving forward with it.
Mr. Chairman, I support it.
Very good.
And I would also echo everything that's been said, that I think this is an important thing that we move forward with.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Okay, Gene?
Thank you.
No, you got it. You're welcome. And thanks for keeping an eye on that. And we're glad to do that, I believe. All right, moving forward, we'll go to tab K, which is the 2020 annual operating and financial plan between the county of Sweetwater and the USDA Forest Service, Ashley National Forest. And to present that is, I believe, our sheriff, Mr. Grossnickel. Are you out there? Or is Mr. Love here for you?
Good morning, Chairman. It's Mr. Love, Sheriff Grossnickel's.
Sure, Deputy Love, thank you. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
So this agreement was actually presented and approved by the board in December of 2019. But the signature and the agreement to send back to the Ashley National Forest, there is a mix-up, a shuffle in the paperwork between the sheriff's office and the clerk's office, essentially.
Okay, so it's something we've approved earlier?
That's correct. So what we're requesting is just a signature from either Commissioner Johnson or you, Chairman Wendling. Commissioner Johnson's actual signature line is on the signature page. So whatever you feel is most appropriate.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Commissioner. So basically it's form we've already approved. It just needs to be signed and sent in. So questions, commissioners?
Yeah, I think the question of signature, I think I originally signed it. Is that not right, Jason?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner Johnson. You actually did sign it. And then, like I said, somehow the paperwork between the sheriff's office and the clerk's office to get back to us to send back to the Forest Service people was misplaced. So we just need another signature so we can get that sent back off to them.
I would recommend then, so it replicates the previous document we approved, that and it falls in line with our motion previously that Commissioner Johnson would sign it, because that would be the right thing to do. So I'll just leave that at that. So do we need to do it? John, are you out there?
I am. I think a motion to approve and allow Commissioner Johnson to sign would be the appropriate method.
Thank you. You answered my question. Okay, commissioners, got a chance to look it over. I think when I looked it over, I didn't see anything different or anything like that. So any questions? With that, what's your pleasure, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Smith.
I move that we approve the 2020 annual operating and financial plan between the County of Sweetwater and the USDA as presented, and allow previous Chairman Johnson to sign.
All right, we have a motion with authorized signature. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I think he neglected to say between Sweetwater County and the USDA Forest Service, Ashley National Forest. But maybe I dozed off.
No, I don't think you did. I think
It could have been.
You know,
it's likely.
But you meant to say that if nobody heard it, right?
Well, you know, I just read what was on the screen there, but I didn't get down far enough. So yes,
I will
amend my motion as pointed out.
All right. Otherwise, I thought maybe your twin had finished filling it in.
I'll second that motion.
We got a motion and a second authorizing Commissioner Johnson to sign. Is there is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Does that help you out, Officer Love?
That's perfect. Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners.
Thank you for joining us. And you have a good one, and remind everybody out there to stay safe. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is tab L, and that's request approval of a voluntary separation program. And with us to present that is Mr. McLean, our HR director. Good morning, Mr. McLean, and welcome.
Morning, County Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. During the last few board meetings, we've discussed the possibility of once again authorizing a voluntary separation program. In your packets are resolution, policies, procedures, and an agreement and release, which are the three implements of such a program. Ostensibly, the program is to offer $42,000 essentially in cash. Employees can take that as such, or they can choose to buy health insurance with that amount. The essential timeframes that are prescribed are that the employees must make such decision by the end of October and must leave employment by the end of November or the date otherwise approved by the board. As you know, some of you know, at least in the past, there's been certain circumstances where there were good reasons to extend those dates. And in that case, we brought that before the board. So at this point, there's been considerable interest. I, as well as a number of my staff, have met with the employees to discuss options, provide information to them regarding health insurance, retirement, and other issues. But until someone signs on the dotted line, it's just a discussion. The other point is that meeting with employees, based on our discussion last week, that it's not a decision until the board signs off on the agreement, recognizing that there may be people and positions that would like to go, but there's no benefit to the county for one reason or another, such as a position that has to be staffed or has to be replaced at no cost savings, or is a key position or some other consideration for the board. So by doing this, we see what the employee interest would be, and then ultimately the final decision would come before the board. Once approved, then those employees would have 7 days to reconsider their decision, after which it would become binding. They would have to leave on or before October 30th, and then make a decision on or before October 30th and leave on or before the end of November. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Gary. Any questions, commissioners?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Johnson.
Gary, the first two documents I don't have any question with, but the policy and procedures for the Sweetwater County Voluntary Separation Program for fiscal year 2021 is in draft. Is that because of the possibility of the dates being changed?
The dates, or that the board has some other changes. It'll be a final copy that we sign, but obviously it's a draft until the board takes action on it.
So you're asking us to tentatively approve a draft document?
The contents of it, yeah, I mean, what I've sent you, if it's approved, would be the final copy. But if there's changes that need to be discussed, then we'll amend them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any other questions for Mr. McLean, commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions for Mr. McLean, if that's okay.
Sure, Commissioner Lloyd.
All right, hey, Mr. McLean, just you said you've had a considerable amount of interest, and I know that you stated that we won't know until people sign, but could you give us an approximate number of people you and your staff have talked to, so we know the volume that we're talking about in this situation?
Sure. We've talked to approximately 20 people. We expect 10 or less, meaning there are some folks that we've met with that just can't do it, and I don't expect to have a lot of interest in. There's others that are basically already committed. So I would expect the board to see 10 or less applications.
And I guess, and I know this is a super hypothetical question, you may not be able to answer answer, Gary, but so if not, tell me no. How many of those positions, in your opinion, will we actually be able to not replace?
You know, again, not knowing exactly the demographics of those, I can tell you that I've had meetings with some of the department heads, and my best estimate, if the people that I think would take the program and that we couldn't replace would be in the neighborhood of 3 to 5, that I think there's good commitment to not replacing, or through some reorganization, maybe replacing that position, but not replacing another, something along those lines.
Do you see any departments that could be negatively affected by this, by like maybe one department having really heavy retirements and really taking away some of that knowledge and experience base from those departments that could be difficult to manage through?
Sure.
I know this is all hypothetical, Gary, so.
Yeah, no, well, it's yeah, I mean, I think we've discussed this a little bit, but Ms. Lane and I have discussed her department, for example, could be negatively impacted if everyone were to leave that were potentially eligible. Some departments have more people than others that could be. Road and Bridge is a department that has a class similar to Miss Lane's. It has a group of older people. I've discussed with Mr. Legursky various ways in which we could address that and still achieve some cost savings. But based on our last discussions, I think that the concept is still that the individuals that are interested execute the agreement, and when that comes back to the board and or the affected elected official or department head could have that discussion, and a decision could be made to approve or not approve those agreements.
Okay. And last question is, currently we're talking the $42,000 buyout, right?
That's correct.
I guess one thing I'd like to throw out there to the rest of the commissioners is I typically am an advocate for the employee and doing the best we can for the employee. And I do understand costs have gone up, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I'd like to see that buyout personally be around 35. I do think it's an increase with cost and things, but I do think that could be a thought consideration that we could look at.
Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. Any other?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
One of the things Gary and I have talked about is, you know, you can temporarily get along without some of these positions. And I think the way we should look at that is to get back whatever the amount is. And I support the 42,000, by the way. But at some point you could, once you've achieved the savings, and if there was a need for that in some future dates, you could reinstate that position. It's not looking at it for time and eternity. We don't know what the future holds, and we don't want to find ourselves in the same position as the state of Wyoming is. I think sometimes you have to take a little risk in this, and this is a financial decision that we're making to reduce the cost of the county to the taxpayers. And I think we look at that as on a case-by-case basis, as indicated by Gary, and make those judgments as to whether we can get along without those positions, at least for some period of time, until there's an ROI on that reduction of force.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Other questions, commissioners, for Gary? Questions?
I do agree with Chairman Johnson that that this is a necessary process that has yielded good results, good to great results over the last 10 years since the county's gone into the process. So I'm okay with moving forward with it, but I once again would reiterate I'd like to see a lower dollar. But we're 5, so that's just.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Roy, I very much appreciate that promotion you gave me, but I'm not the chairman. I'm the lame duck.
I don't think you're lame. I just think, and I don't think you're a duck either, Wally. So we'll go with your Wally.
Could I
Well,
respond?
I'd have to agree with that. So anyhow,
I won't let anyone call you Doug.
moving forward here, questions for Mr. McLean. We can get into the discussion part after a motion in a second. So, any more questions for Mr. McLean or Mr. De Leon regarding the legal aspects of this?
Mr. Chairman, could I just address a question that Mr. Lloyd had?
Sure.
One of the things, and I'm not sure how well we discussed this, but one of the other motivations in terms of increasing the amount, and I hear what you're saying, is historically, if we were to divide up the health insurance component and do it at a later date on its own, because we have a tax exempt Section 125 plan, there's no taxes on that. And so under this format, because we have a mix of people who are interested in health insurance and cash, the IRS has stated that it has to be taxed. And so in order to create the same amount of incentive, especially with respect to the health insurance, it seemed important to have a little bit higher amount given that that's going to be taxed.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Any other questions for Gary? Any questions from Mr. De Leon, our attorney? John, I believe you've reviewed the forms. You're comfortable with all of them?
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. With that, commissioners, your pleasure.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Johnson.
I'm obviously a liaison to HR, so I'll take the blame for this one way or the other. I make a motion to approve resolution 2020-09-CC-01, which would also include Sweetwater County Voluntary Separation Plan VSP agreement and release, and also approve tentatively the draft that is shown and is called the Policies and Procedures for the Sweetwater County Voluntary Separation Program, VSP fiscal year -20-21, with the understanding that that draft can be reviewed at some future date as on a case-by-case basis.
Very good. We have a motion very lengthy, but understand, is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Smith, seconds. With that, commissioners, any discussion? With that, no discussion, commissioners, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we'll move forward, Gary. We have our voluntary separation plan, and you'll be able to start working on that, and we'll see how it shakes out. Thank you for putting that together again for us, as you always do, and thank you, John, for your input. Moving on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. McLean.
Yeah, just a quick point. Is the board okay? I know that some employees may want to leave earlier upon execution. So my plan was, as the employees sign them, to bring them up at the next available board meeting. Is that okay, or would you like to see them all as a group?
For me, myself, I'd bring them as they're ready, Gary. I don't know about the other commissioners. That's just my thinking.
I think that's logical. I agree with that.
Yeah. When you're looking at cost savings, sooner you can start getting that, the better you are, especially in this financial environment right now, Mr. McLean. So I'd be in favor.
Thank you. I'll proceed as planned, and unless there's a change of heart.
Let me ask this question. Any other commissioner have any concerns with that? You're okay? Okay. Very good. All right, Gary. Very good. You're still up, and our next topic is a request for approval or request approval for payment of flu vaccinations. And Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners. I hope you can hear me okay. They're doing a little work on the boiler section. So if you can't, please give me a sign and I'll try to speak up. This is a program that the county's been doing for a number of years, in which we, out of the insurance fund, pay for employees, any qualified dependents and spouses to obtain their flu vaccine through the Board of Health. They provide the flu vaccines at their cost, so no additional cost, which is $25. In the memo that's been provided to the board, there's kind of a summary of the last 5 years or so of the participation in the program. We expect the cost to be around $5,000, maybe as high as $5,500 based on past activity. I'm sure all of you are well aware of the benefits of the flu vaccine, especially in light of our current circumstances, one of keeping employees and families healthy, and the workplace healthy, and also part of minimizing the community spread. So I think it's a really good investment. The Board of Health, one thing I would point out is in the past, we've had these clinics in the courthouse and the Health and Human Services building. Obviously, with the COVID challenges presented with us today, those will be done at the locations and generally outside at the dates that are indicated, just in a more manageable, risk-free environment, but those will still occur. And so I'd encourage the board to approve this program. I think it's been well received and it's been a great benefit to the county.
Thank you, Gary. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. McLean?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Shanefield?
no questions. I just want to say that I support this program. I think it's a great benefit that we can offer to our employees that want to get the flu vaccine.
Thank you, Commissioner Shanefield. Other commissioners, comments, questions? No further questions for Mr. McLean. Commissioners, your pleasure.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Shanefield.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request for approval of the payment for the flu vaccinations for employees and retirees of Sweetwater County and component units as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion, commissioners? My only comment is it is a great program, and I think the employees take really good advantage of it, as we can see by the numbers, as well as the component units. And I'm glad to see, or hopeful to see, that the commission continues to support this program. With that, I'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. McLean, we'll move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Have a good day. Appreciate it. Up next will be tab N. It's the MOU between the Wyoming Office of Guardian Ad Litem and Sweetwater County, Wyoming. And Mr. De Leon is here to present that. Mr. De Leon, welcome again.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner. So this is the MOU with the Office of Guardian Ad Litem, which Guardian Ad Litem refers to the attorney who represents the children in various cases, which include neglect, chins, delinquent, and termination cases. This agreement is essentially where the Office of Guardian Ad Litem makes an agreement with the counties to pay for 25% of the attorney costs and operation costs for Guardian Ad Litem in those various cases. And the 25% is determined by the proportion of children that are served through having an attorney for those children in Sweetwater County. This has been in place in Sweetwater County since about December of 2013. It's been in place throughout the state since 2008. And we currently have 2 full-time attorneys, 1 part-time attorney. And so far this year in 2020, there have been 286 children who have had an attorney in these types of cases. There were 440 last year. $595 the year before. So there's quite a few kids that have attorneys appointed in those various cases. And this MOU is essentially agreeing to pay 25% of their costs. The only other piece, the county also agrees pursuant to this MOU to provide the office space for those attorneys. So that is the agreement. It's been in place for quite a while. They do serve quite a few children. Just to let you know, in terms of, I did talk with the clerk's office. So far, the payment this year has been $30,000. Last year, it was $62,000. The year before, it was $64,000. So it's pretty consistently staying at that number. So if there are any questions, I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. De Leon. Commissioners, questions for Mr. De Leon? Mr. De Leon, the guardian ad litem's office is located here in the courthouse?
That's correct. It's on the third floor, right as you exit the elevator or near the clerk of district court's office.
Thank you. Other questions, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Shanefield.
I just have a quick question as to how many guardian ad litem's we have currently working in those positions.
Yeah, Commissioner Shanefield, so there are two full-time contracted and there is one part-time. So primarily the two full-time handle the majority of the caseload, but if there's conflicts, different families represented, then they'll spill over to that part-time contract.
Thank you.
That brings up a question for me. You know, when you say, is there two full-time position, one-time position, which means there can be any number of attorneys, or is there just three attorneys specifically, three individual attorneys, two of them are part-time, or I mean, two of them full-time, one part-time?
So the Office of Guardian ad litem will determine how many attorneys are needed. They have a caseload capacity of 80 to 100. And so the Office of Guardian ad litem will look at each jurisdiction, determine how much are needed in each location. And as it currently stands, they have determined that based on the caseloads in Sweetwater County, that they will have two full-time and one part-time.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions for Mr. De Leon, commissioners? With that, commissioners, what's your pleasure regarding the MOU between the Wyoming Office of Guardian ad litem and Sweetwater County, Wyoming?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve the memorandum of the understanding between the Wyoming Office of Guardian ad litem in Sweetwater County, Wyoming, and let the chairman sign all needed documents.
Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd, but I think documents to be signed, everybody signs, I believe. Am I right, John?
No.
No, Commissioner, no, you're right. I guess I looked at everything but that page. Thanks, Lloyd. Appreciate it. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion, commissioners? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. De Leon. Appreciate it. With that, our next item is a resolution to enter into fire restrictions with Sweetwater County. And to talk with us about that is Mr. Bornasian, our fire warden. Good morning, Mike, and welcome.
Good morning, commissioners. A little fall in the air today. It's timing is everything, right?
Right.
Well, the discussion of fire restrictions is one me and my counterparts with the federal agencies and other county fire wardens have throughout each summer as summer progresses and things continue to dry out and we get into summertime trends with our wildland fuels, our weather, available resources, and things of that nature all come into consideration when it comes to fire restrictions. This year with COVID being an impact to the country, there's been a tremendous amount of increase, especially on the national forest lands, of public visitation and usage, which triggered some early, perhaps maybe earlier than usual, fire restrictions to go into place with some of the national forests around the state of Wyoming, in the Rocky Mountain area in general. And then the Ashley National Forest entered into fire restrictions around the 1st of August. There's various phases of fire restrictions, level 1, level 2, level 3. Basically, it's a ban of outdoor fires unless they're in approved fire ring, approved campground area, things of that nature is really what we're focusing on with level 1, because of the amount of people that are out in the forest, finding their own space, trying to keep their space from other people, creating their own campground, you might say, causes them to perhaps have fires in areas that were never intended to have a campfire. So the Ashley went into restrictions around the 1st of August. Nationally, preparedness levels have gone up slowly and steadily as they usually do this time of year. Then the BLM followed suit. On August 18th, it went into effect. The decision was made around the 12th, I believe, for them to go into restrictions, level 1 as well, trying to have a unified front on public lands. After the BLM went into restrictions, Teton County went into restrictions earlier in August because of the amount of visitation they were having. And then several of the counties around us went into restrictions as well. We were having hot, dry, windy weather, red flag warnings, things of that nature. At the time the BLM went into restrictions, I had just missed the agenda deadline to bring this to you for discussion. So it had to wait until this meeting several weeks later. So at this time, I come before you to basically, I'm going to say I'm not making a recommendation to go into fire restrictions. I'm making a recommendation to the board to have a discussion about fire restrictions and what that means to the community, the citizens of Sweetwater County, if we go into fire restrictions. The last time the county went into fire restrictions that I'm aware of was in 2012. So with that, there's a resolution that was drafted by Mr. De Leon that mirrors language used by some of the other counties and the Bureau of Land Management on their restrictions, so that it creates a clear picture across the board of the restrictions are the same regardless of the land you may be on if the restrictions are in place. With that being said, another thing to consider is that Sweetwater County is checkerboarded quite a bit with private and public lands. So currently on the BLM lands, fire restrictions are in place. On the private lands within Sweetwater County, they are not. So that can lead to confusion perhaps with some of the public out using lands within Sweetwater County. It is hunting season, and of course, as you all know, it got cool overnight. So those hunters will be wanting to build a fire to stay warm. So I see that at this time, there's a lot of resources in the county. There's a lot of resources available to us from the BLM when it comes to fire suppression, things of that nature. Going into restrictions also would include 2 fire districts, specifically that are staffed: the Eden-Farson Fire District and the Sweetwater County Fire District number 1. Eden-Farson, I have not heard any reply back or comment from. Sweetwater County Fire District number 1, Chief Kitchener, was in favor of going into restrictions when we had this discussion 2 weeks ago. Outside of that, I've not had anybody say they're not in favor, but myself, along with several other of the chiefs of the smaller departments, there's always a concern when you try to implement a resolution that restricts someone's use of their own property. And that's always can be a challenge for us especially today, the era we're in. So I think we just need to consider that. I say currently today's fire danger rating is moderate. We were very high. We're going to have a warm up over the next few days. We may reach high 80s on Thursday, Friday, and then we've got another cold front coming through. Temperatures will be in the 70s. Rain is forecasted for Labor Day because it's Labor Day, and things of that nature. We're starting to get into our fall trends. So that's what I lay out before you, and I'll turn it over to Mr. De Leon if you'd like to add anything on the resolution itself.
Mr. De Leon, do you have anything?
So as Mike pointed out, this does mirror the language that was used with the BLM restrictions. The distinction, of course, as Mike pointed out, and as the sheriff has identified, the concern is in relation to public versus private land. And so that would be the point of consideration for the commissioners. The only other thing that I would point out is the time frame that is placed in that resolution is between September 1st and October 6th, which would be the next two commissioner meetings. Should the commission want to proceed with all or part of this resolution, it could also be, the time period could be reduced from September 1st to September 15th, which would be the next commissioner meeting. And so if you have any questions for me in terms of, beyond the recommendation piece, the enforcement piece, I can certainly answer those to the best I can.
Thank you, Mr. De Leon. I did ask the sheriff if he could join us on the agenda item, and of course he is busy with helping another department in staffing, sheriff's department that is in the state. He's involved in that, so he allowed his Deputy Sheriff Jason Love to join us, and I think Jason is here to answer any questions. Officer Love, do you have anything you want to add before commissioners start asking questions? Well,
Can you hear me now, Chairman?
Yeah, we got you now. You were muted. Go ahead.
Okay, so previous conversations with Sheriff Grossnickel, he's indicated that he's happy to help educate, but he's not interested in taking enforcement action on private property.
Thank you for that. Officer Love. So,
I see some.
with that, commissioners, any questions for either Mr. De Leon, Warden Bornasium, or Officer Love?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
As I read this, the part that bothers me is when you're talking about restrictions on private land. You talk about the checkerboard, that's one thing, but there's other private lands out there, ranchers, farmers, etc. My view on it should be, if you're going to put in a restriction, it should be restriction on public lands with a recommendation on private lands. And I think the dates are important, because when people are out there hunting, sure enough, it might be 80 degrees one day, but it might be snowing the next. So I think we've got to go forward, because we're in the fall. As you indicated, Mike, fall came last night, so it's cooled off. But you're probably right, it's probably going to be warm again. So that's my thought. And I think maybe if we're going to do this, it should be a restriction on public lands, recommendations on private lands.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any other commissioner comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shanefield.
I agree with Commissioner Johnson's input, and I guess I have a question around Mr. Bornasian around enforcement. I mean, clearly the Sheriff's Department, this doesn't necessarily have any teeth in the restrictions, so I just wanted some more clarification around that.
Mr. De Leon, could you answer that, or?
So I think there is a violation would be a misdemeanor, which carries with it up to $100 fine and or potential jail time. I think the way the sheriff has identified it, that his goal would be to help educate and but not restrict on private land. And I think with those modifications that Chairman Johnson has identified, that would significantly reduce the need for enforcement. And so the way I would envision that is if the board were to modify this under the first therefore paragraph, it would say that the following are prohibited on public lands and recommended on private land beginning September 1st through the period that the commission were to determine.
Mr. Chairman, can I add something to that?
Yeah, Commissioner, or I'm sorry, Warden Bornasian, yes.
One step at a time, sir.
Yep.
What has actually already happened is we already have fire restrictions on all public lands. The BLM, the National Forest, and the state of Wyoming prohibit open fires unless they're in an approved campsite, and along with the other elements that are listed here. So we already have fire restrictions in place by the federal land management agencies on all public lands within their jurisdiction, which includes Sweetwater County. So I don't know that we even need to, if that's the way the board wishes to proceed, that restriction is always already in place. And then when those public lands agencies decide that it's time to rescind that, they can do that at their own volition, and then it wouldn't have to come through this board to try and time that with them. One of the concerns I have is that if the BLM or the Ashley National Forest specifically, one of those was to decide, say next week, we're going to dissolve fire restrictions on our lands, effective date, we would have to wait till our next board meeting to then have a discussion to dissolve the resolution. So if this commission is in favor of supporting fire restrictions on public lands, that is already in place. This resolution is specific to private lands within Sweetwater County. And if that's the decision that the board wishes to take, that we do not want to enforce those restrictions on private property within Sweetwater County, then I would simply say then there's no need for this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Bornasian. John, do you agree with that?
I agree with the distinction that the warden identified.
Thank you. My question, or other commissioners first, other questions for Mike or John or Officer Love?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification Mike gave, and because of that, it kind of seems unnecessary. I also don't feel I agree with Wally and Lauren in saying that on the private lands it should be recommended, and so we can dictate more on public lands, but it's already there in place on public lands. So I'm not really comfortable with putting some restrictions on private lands. So I would say that if they're already there, which Mike has said, on public lands, then there really isn't a need for this resolution.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? Mike, I have one. And John, either one of you can answer this if I ask in a good way, is consequences. A fire starts either on public or public land. And let's just say private land right now, because that's what we're dealing with. A fire starts on private land, and we have restrictions in place versus no restrictions in place. What are the consequences, liabilities of having a resolution in place versus not having one?
Well, I'll speak from the fire side of it, not the legal side of it, if that's all right.
Sure.
From the fire side of it, when we have a fire that starts on private property, whether it's lightning or human caused or anything else, if that fire burns onto public land, then we enter into a cost share agreement, which we've done every year since I've been here. We've always had a fire that's done that. Vice versa, or starts on private, goes to public, or starts on public, goes to private. So we enter a cost share agreement. Fire restrictions don't come into play with that cost share agreement as to the amount we would pay or anything like that. I would say that if there was fire restrictions in place, then there may be a way for our costs that may have been incurred to perhaps go to legal counsel to seek recovery. But from a fire standpoint, it doesn't change how we do business or how we enter a cost share with our federal or other partners. And I can tell you that for this year, we have had 2 fires that I would say could have been or may have been prevented if we were in fire restriction and if the parties that started them would have adhered to the restriction. We've had 2 fires total out of over 60 fires that we've responded to that this restriction would have prohibited. Now, I'm not saying the next fire could always be your worst fire, and who knows how that one's going to start. But in general, a very small percentage of our fires in this county are started by citizens doing things that are dangerous or may cause open flames in the wrong areas. Most of our fires, an honest evaluation is when they're human caused, they're either accidental or they're related to a firearm because they were shooting incendiary targets or tracer rounds. Outside of that, it's fireworks, our biggest starter of fires. So I'll leave it at that, sir.
Thank you. John, do you have anything to add to that from legal end?
So, Mr. Chairman, I agree with Mike that the nature of the criminal component to this mechanism, it's not primarily punitive. It only contains a $100 fine and a shorter jail period attached to it. It provides a mechanism, as you, Mr. Chairman, identify for recovery of costs in the event that there's an actual fire. There are other statutory methods for recovery, meaning other violations of the law that could take place that could be used as well. So that this does provide another minor punitive mechanism and a method for cost recovery.
Thank you, Mr. De Leon. Appreciate it. Commissioners, any questions? With that, I would ask the commissioners what's their pleasure regarding resolution number 2020-09 CC-03, which is a resolution establishing partial fire restrictions.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
I agree with Commissioner Smith. I don't think it's necessary.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I'm on the same page.
Very good. So I guess I'll ask one more time, and if we don't get a motion, it'll die for lack of a motion. Pleasure. Resolution number 2020-09-CC-03, resolution establishing partial fire restrictions. Educational pause time. Cindy, you didn't even smile at that. Commissioners, for lack of a motion, item tab O, which is request to approve a resolution to enter into fire restrictions with Sweetwater County has failed for lack of a motion. Any other questions? Very good, Mike. That work?
Thank you for your time, commissioners.
Thank you for your time, and you guys be safe out there. And not only is cold weather brings the relief for fire, but it starts the bugling of elk. Anyhow, let's move on with our next agenda item, tab P.
Chairman?
Yes.
With all due respect to Senator James and Mr. Bjork, can we have a 5-minute break? Unless it's an impedance to them. It's been a couple.
No, we're perfect. You know, in fact, I think we're a little bit of we're right close to being on track. So let's take a 10-minute break. If for the commission.
Thank you, Senator James and Mr. Bjork.
Yeah, thank you.
Good thinking, Roy.
Lauren. Tim, as soon as Wally gets back. Welcome. I'd like to call this County Commissioners meeting of September 1st back to order. And with that, we'll move on with our agenda. And our agenda again is tab P. We have a request to approve a resolution honoring Constitution of the State of Wyoming, and here to present is and visit with us is Senator James, as well as Mr. Bjork. You're back again. Welcome back, Mr. Bjork, and welcome, Senator. With that, Commissioners, I will turn the floor over to Senator James. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. How are you all today?
Doing wonderful. Hope you're well.
I am. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me here today. So today I'm bringing you this resolution to acknowledge the results of the government health orders, which have arguably resulted in some social ills, including some increased employment, business closures, suicides, poverty, domestic abuse, homelessness, and alcohol and drug abuse. By passing this resolution, it will show that the county will be united when I go down to Cheyenne in January and fight for the people's rights to make their own health care rights. According to Article 1 in Section 38, Alpha of the Wyoming Constitution, they have the right to make their own health care decisions. And I, as their elected official, swore an oath to uphold. So I ask that you all sign this resolution and also defend the people's constitutional rights. I just make this short and sweet, and I thank you, and I stand for any questions.
Commissioners, questions for Mr. James, or I believe Mr. Bjork is a co-presenter. Is that correct, Senator?
That is correct. Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, any questions? Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
Question why they felt necessary to reference Goshen County. Is there, I have nothing wrong with it. I love Goshen County, don't get me wrong. Any reason for doing that?
Commissioners, I referenced Goshen County because they passed this, and I felt that we should follow along with them because they're setting precedents here.
Thank you.
The only thought I have is it would be good if this came from the Wyoming County Commissioners Association in general, but I understand it'd be very hard to get that done right now. So I have no problem with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioners, other comments?
I guess one question comment is, Senator James, would be, in a way, I think we've already kind of taken this stance without a resolution within our own policies of our own buildings, not requiring them, making recommendations and saying to follow that, and really knowing that really if we were to pass this resolution, it wouldn't create any new enforcement because most of that would be legislatively based. I don't know if we gain any real positive ground with even moving forward in the resolution, just simply because I think by policy and procedure, we've already shown this.
Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd.
Well, by doing this, it shows on paper that you guys are united. I mean, even if it doesn't technically do anything, it shows that you guys are united. I understand that you guys have done it in policy in your own buildings and everything, but it'll show when I go down there. So that's the whole point behind this, that I have the support of my county when I go to Cheyenne in January for next general session.
Have you talked to any of our other local legislators to see where they stand on this? Because, you know, we have multiple folks that that support Sweetwater County. Have you had a chance to talk to any of the other legislators about where they stand on this issue?
I haven't been able to directly get a hold of any of them yet.
Can I speak in on this one a little bit? Tom, I have spoken to some other legislators over the past several weeks on this matter. I know you're busy with your job outside of your legislative duties, and they all agree with Tom on this, commissioners. And I think what Tom is doing and what I'm supporting also is that we give our citizens, our people in Sweetwater, a voice that's representing them, rather than getting different mandates or different recommendations from different. You know, we're getting bombarded by all this from the press, from the mass media. We're also being bombarded by the federals and state rhetoric out there. And what's happened, and I talked to many constituents of Tom's and some other people as well, is people are really confused right now, and there's no clear direction. I think if the county adopts this resolution, it's not a legal binding thing, anything in particular, other than just an adoption of, hey, we believe in these values, and we need to let our people in our county feel reassured. And I think at this point in time, I think a reassurance is necessary, just as Tom was saying.
Thank you, Mr. Bjork.
Just a follow-up question.
On that?
Let's Commissioner Lloyd first. He was on. Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Bjork, could you tell me what specific Sweetwater County legislators have told you they support this in name, not just in generality?
I'd have to go back through some of my emails and some of the talk there. That'd take me a few minutes to do. I don't really want to take up to you guys much time, but I'd be willing to share those information with you, and I can send those names to you. It's the conversation has begun, is what's really happening, and I know a lot of legislators aren't. They're busy. I mean, they really don't have the time to get together and talk, it seems like, and they've tried to meet, have a special legislative sessions, and that's been hit with some roadblocks, obviously. And so that's those concerns. It's just conversations and stuff like that mainly. So, but yeah, I'll get back with you, Roy, on that.
Thank you. Commissioner John, or Roy, was that all you had?
I'm marinating, so there could be more.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Johnson.
You guys are.
I don't marinate, I meditate. But anyway, we've done this before. We took a stance on the Second Amendment, and I think we're elected. We represent people, and people need to know how we think about these things. I happen to strongly support what's being presented here, and I will support this this resolution, and I think the people need to know that and where we stand on these different things. This is somewhat controversial, so we need to take a position, and we do represent those people. And we're bound to do that. And I think at times like this, we need to do it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Other commissioners? Commissioner Smith?
Thanks, Chairman. Just on a lighter note, Senator James, did you mentioned Goshen? Did Teton County endorse this at all, or was that? I'm just kidding. You don't have to answer that. I'm all for the Constitution of Wyoming for sure. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with this.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Shanefield.
I've been approached by I believe three of our local legislators outside of Senator James, and they voiced concern with this specifically. And so I have to throw that out there because I had been approached by them last weekend on Saturday. I'm curious as to what other counties Senator James has, or this group has presented this same resolution to, and what the results have been. I know Goshen County passed it. I had heard that there have been a few other counties who did not. So I'm curious as to around that, and as to what their reasoning was. And then I'd also like to ask John DeLeon a few questions when they're done with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Shanefield. Commissioner James, counties that have not or have others?
I'm not aware of any other counties that have presented this. So.
Thank you.
I can interject with that. I do know Campbell County did hear this and they did not pass it.
Exactly. Thank you.
And some of their cited reasons, and I did talk to Attorney DeLeon about this, and this was none of our opinions, but there were concerns about some of the messages it sent specifically toward, hey, we don't want to follow any of your agreements, but yet they're getting FEMA and CARES Act funding, and they were worried about that. Talking to Mr. DeLeon, we don't think that's a huge issue, but that was something they cited. And that was the major specific reason I saw the Campbell County not passing, but they did look at it and did not pass it.
So funding was more important than people's constitutional rights. Got it.
I didn't say that, Mr. James. I was repeating what they said.
I know you weren't saying it, but they were saying it. I understand.
Agree with that statement.
Mr. Wending?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner Lloyd?
No.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Bjork.
Hey, I really appreciate the candor here. This is really nice. There is something that we could do. If you did pass the resolution, you can also put a reminder in there that there is a statute that is, I think it's 35-4-101, Department of Health to prescribe rules and regulations, penalty for violation, resisting or interfering with enforcement. That's still a law in the books as well. And that's a clear message that I think that the Wyoming Department of Health have presented pretty clearly to a lot of people, that especially that they were quarantined for contact trace or some other thing. I think if we adopt this, it doesn't negate the federal, the state laws that are in place, and we're not circumnavigating any of that as either. And I don't think it sends a mixed message either, as long as we're cleared in the resolution and also reiterate that, hey, there are still state, not mandates, but state laws that are still on the books that we still need to follow. And I think if this does get passed, I think that should be brought up in the message as well. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Shanefield.
One other concern that had been brought up to my attention prior to this meeting was from a constituent was the concern to allow for our private businesses to either feel like they need to protect themselves or otherwise, and that this potentially could send a negative message to our private businesses that we do not support them and their decision for their own business.
Thank you. Other comments, questions?
I have some questions for Mr. DeLeon, and I just wanted his opinion on if this had any impact. I know that this does have the ... but the parentheses are not in it when it quotes the Constitution. I just wanted to ensure that we were doing everything legally and that it's stated correctly, and that we didn't need to include the entire article, section 38 in this.
Commissioner John DeLeon.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Shainfeld, the way I understand your question, Commissioner Shainfeld, I think you are correct. The specific article and section that is being referred to, which addresses healthcare access, does have multiple parts. One part specifically addresses the rights of the citizens. One part addresses the legislative ability to reasonably and necessarily restrict those rights. So there are two parts to that constitutional article and section. And so it would, of course, when you understand the scope of that, the meaning of that, it is good to take it all into consideration. How that is documented is certainly up to the commission. I think that it is commonplace to, when you are citing a statute, constitution, that you will sometimes extract the component that is being referenced. But I think in terms of understanding, I think you are correct, Commissioner Shainfeld. It is good to understand that there is a rights component and there is a legislative component which permits restrictions on those rights.
Thank you, Mr. DeLeon. Does that answer your question, Lauren? Very good.
It does. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, my only last question, throw it to Deputy Attorney DeLeon, and just his general thoughts about this resolution. If that's okay.
Sure. Again, Commissioner Lloyd, we did talk about it a little bit. I think the commission has addressed the mask issue in terms of countywide addressing that. I think the intent, it sounds like that Senator James is simply trying to put out the idea that supporting individual rights is the message that Senator James is trying to implement. In terms of the legal side of it, which is the primary consideration for the county attorney's office, I think that the important part is to be able to have the mechanisms available. We're currently in the 11th continuation of the state health orders. And so to be able to have all those mechanisms available is important. So I think that the main I think concern for the county attorney's office is that those mechanisms are available. As the commission knows, when the mask issue was presented, the recommendation of the county attorney's office was that language that was providing a recommendation and not mandatory in nature was the county attorney's recommendation at that point in time, and that continues to be our recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. DeLeon.
One last question. So do you feel this this resolution meets that concept of making it a recommendation, or does it need changes in your opinion to meet that concept?
I think I could certainly, if you'd like, I can certainly get together with the senator. The phrase, the very last phrase, it says to refrain from any county level virus related mandates concerning individual healthcare decisions. I think it could be interpreted in different ways. And so if the commission wanted us to communicate on a way that that made it purely a comment to the commission versus removing mandates, then I could certainly participate in that process. But as it's currently written, it does say to refrain from any county level virus related mandates.
Thank you. Commissioner Shanefield.
Mr. Chairman, that kind of raised a question in my mind too, is that we don't have control over what our county health official is doing. We don't have control over what the state health official is doing. And so for us to put in this agreement that we refrain from any county level virus mandate, when we truly don't have control over what the county health officers are doing and what their requirements are, is there a legal concern around that, Mr. DeLeon?
I got a question.
So again, Commissioner Shanefield, that would be the broadest. I think that language could potentially be worded in a way to express the sentiment I think that Senator James is identifying, without specifically saying that there will be a refrain from any legislative and statutory ability that of either the county health officer or the state health officer. Right. That is the I guess the component that could have different interpretations. Although we hear Senator James very clearly stating that is not the intent of it.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Yeah, just a minute. Commissioner Shanefield, any more questions with that?
No, that answered my questions. And I want to be really clear. I support this allowing people to make their own health decisions and to choose what they want to do with mask wearing. But I just want to make sure that we're doing this in the correct manner, and that we also have the responsibility to support what the law says around who can make those decisions, and supporting that as a general wellness for our community. I don't want to create any more divide, and I don't want to create any more issues. So,
thank you. Mr. Bjork, you wanted to respond earlier in that.
I do. Thank you. I think I share the same sentiments as Miss. Can I call you Lauren? I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. I think I share the same sentiment as she does. Thing. But I have a question here. Our county health officials, who are they under actually? Are they under the county or under the state? Who do they answer to?
John?
So they would follow, of course, they have to get approval from the state health officer. And Commissioner Shanefield, I think that the point that you're making there, I think if that last sentence was taken off, I think it might make the point that because the language says that the board would encourage the public to make decisions pursuant to the Constitution. And so it does address the portion of that Constitution that is being emphasized without excluding, of course, the other components and that last. So I think that may accomplish the sentiment that you're looking for.
All right. There was another commissioner that had a comment that I missed.
I have a question.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I think this language is probably just exactly what Goshen County did, but I think the comment about removing that last sentence would probably help my co-commissioners. I'm good with the whole thing the way it's printed, but if some of my co-commissioners are not, and that taking that one sentence out of there would help, that could be done and we could pass this thing or vote it down. I think we need to take an action on it one way or the other. And if that one sentence, portion of that one sentence were taken out of there, I would ask Senator James whether he'd have any problem with that.
This is exactly how Goshen had it written. And like Mr. DeLeon was saying, this is, it was about interpretation. And my intent of this is exactly as he was saying. So it's just to have the county unite under this and to give the people the freedom to decide. So it's not mandating anyone to do anything.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up on that,
Mr. Johnson.
I think the intent is extremely important on this, and I think that if Goshen went along with it, I think those people are of sound mind. And this issue of who's really in charge of the state, I think it goes all the way up to the governor's office. Do the health officials have more authority than the governor? Then we come down, do the health officials in Sweetwater County have more than authority than the county commissioners? And I don't believe they should, or they do, or they should, but we don't need to discuss that. I think let's take an action on this. I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-09-CC-02 as written.
Okay, that ends any questions. We'll finish it up in discussion because I will definitely have something to say. So we have a motion by Commissioner Johnson. Is there a second? As it's presented, commissioners. No changes. Is there a second? We have a motion for resolution 2020-09-CC-02 to be approved as presented. One more time. Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Commissioners, that closes this agenda item. Senator James, Mr. Harold or Bjork, thank you very much for joining us today, and certainly wish you the best of luck as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to tab Q, which is a addition to our agenda. And that is basically MOU for Gateway South transmission line and a letter of interest to be party of the industrial siting. And with us, we have Eric Bingham, as well as our attorney, Mr. De Leon. Gentlemen, welcome again.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. But what you have before you today is an MOU between Carbon County and the listed entities that are on there that are in Carbon County. Quite a few affected communities, as you can see in that MOU. And then also signing this MOU is Wamsutter and Sweetwater County. As far as who is a part of Sweetwater County's request, we have the airport, the fire department, and the sheriff's department that are included asking for impact fees. The town of Wamsutter, just for your information, did sign this MOU yesterday. This was a result of 3 days of negotiations. As budgets get tighter and the revenues go down in the state and to the communities, fighting for these dollars even gets more difficult. But we did come out with almost 26% of the impact fees, where 24% of the project is in Sweetwater County. So, Mr. Chairman, what we're asking is for approval of the MOU today. Oh, and just so you're aware, the total amount for the public to know for impact fees that we're requesting on Gateway South is $1,573,000. So I am asking for approval of the MOU and then also authorize chairman to sign and also authorize the chairman to sign as a letter of intent to be party of the Gateway South. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Mr. De Leon, anything to add?
No, Mr. Chairman.
MOU, everything looks good. I mean, it probably parallels everything else we've done in other siting issues, MOUs, but everything looked good to you?
It did. You know, no legal issues there. We will be set for a pre-hearing, just as we are in the next cases. So that'll be the next step in the process.
Thank you. Commissioner Shanefield, you were co-lead on this. Any comments?
No, I think that Eric and the team have done a great job moving forward with it, and I support where we ended up. I think it's a good thing for Sweetwater County.
Thank you, Commissioner Shanefield. Commissioners, any questions for Eric or Mr. De Leon or Lauren?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I think that Eric and his group has done a great job of continuing to do a great job on this, but I think we all need to be aware of that there was a letter just recently written on Transwest where that's been delayed about 2 years. And that's over 5 million. I think the number was 5.2 million on that. So I still don't understand why we've got two power lines going in the same direction. Doesn't make sense to me, but I guess those people that are in charge of those companies have better understanding what the needs are. So anyway, I think it's well done, Eric, and appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. It was well done. And I'm glad you brought up about Gateway West being put on hold for 2 years because
Transwest.
Or Transwest, thank you. Transwest being put on hold for 2 years because not many people realize that, but also shows definitely that could happen with any of these other transmission lines or industrial sidings that projects we're working with. So thank you very much for that, Commissioner Johnson. Other questions, commissioners? No further questions. I will ask, what's the pleasure for the commissioners regarding the MOU as well as the interest to be party of the industrial siding project?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Smith.
Move that we approve both the LOI and the MOU and authorize the chairman to sign both.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and authorize the chairman to sign. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Shanefield. We have a motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Shanefield. Any further discussion? With no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good job, Lauren, Eric, and John, Eric, and team. Good job. So thank you very much as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Moving forward is other. I might just mention the commissioners during break. I talked with Mr. McLean, and as we know, the federal government has come out with, I probably got the terminology wrong, with a holiday for paying side of taxes at the federal level, employee side for employees, I believe. But there's a caveat with that is that would be the taxes for this year as well as for the rest of this year through December. And then of course, Mr. McLean is investigating as to whether or not those get paid back after the first year. So he will be at our next meeting on the agenda to have that discussion because it'll take commissioner action to approve that particular bed of business. So just so you know, that'll be on the agenda. Does anybody else have anything for the next agenda or right now?
Yeah, just a little further clarification on that. When I read that on it's deferring those payroll taxes, but it's not clear whether they have to be paid back. And I think that's very important that we understand that.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner Johnson. And that's what Gary's going to look at. We'll have it on our next agenda. But you're exactly right. Anything else, commissioners, as we move forward? Just for a quick update before we do, is there an executive session needed? Executive session. John?
Not for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, with that, there will be no executive session. Before we adjourn, just to remind them, commissioners, at 1:15 sharp, you should have a Zoom invite for a Board of Equalization meeting through the clerk's office, attorney's office. We will have to log on that at 1:15 and we will be a Board of Equalization. And then when that's completed, we'll move into our workshop for strategic planning which will be led by Commissioner Lloyd and supported by Commissioner Shanefield. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. I will be unable to attend those. I had some minor surgery yesterday, and I've got some follow-up today that I'll have to do that. So you'll have to do that without me.
Well, we'll try very hard. It won't be the same. I hope you're doing okay, and hope everything works out with your appointment. But you will be missed, because the Board of Equalization, when I looked through this group of commissioners, last year was my first one. It was very easy. I'm sure you experienced more than that, so we'll try and get through. But anyhow, with that, no further business to come before the commissioners. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
We got a motion by Commissioner Lloyd. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shanefield. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Everybody, 1:15 sharp, please. Thank you.